Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 regular City Council meeting of April 6, 2022. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Arias.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I am here.
Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Gray. Here. And Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you. At this time, we have the pleasure of having Pastor Roland Banks of Compassion Christian Church to offer the invocation. Pastor Banks and his church have been very, very involved in community outreach. They have a school on their premises, provide a lot of tutoring. Really appreciate you. And then following Pastor Banks' invocation, my very capable assistant, Danielle Maybon, will lead us in the invocation. She's the one who answers the phone and always gets all the compliments from you for her customer service. Please all stand.
Let's bow our heads and let's pray. Father, we just thank and praise you for this day that you have made. We rejoice and we're glad in it. We thank you, Father, for this great nation, this great state, this great city that we live in, Father. We pray for the wisdom of God, that we can live quiet and peaceable lives. Father, I pray for all the elected officials, Father, for their family members, Father, for all of those things that concern them. We pray for the city and the residents of Bakersfield, Father, that we would all be able to come together, unified, collaborate together, schools, industry, business, social services, politicians, all come together to create a dynamic future for our children. Father, we thank you for your wisdom that you continue to give us to do everything decently and in order. We thank you for it now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Banks.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated. It's wonderful to see a packed house again today. Thank you for engaging in the civic process. We appreciate it. We have a lot of people standing in different places, so if you have empty seats next to you, would you please raise your hand so we can help get them seated? Well, thank you very much again for being here. And at this point, we get to share a few of our guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones. Please be courteous in the use of your cameras and videos. And for safety reasons, and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chambers or in the lobby. Applause is allowed only during the presentations portion of the meeting, but not during other parts of the meeting. Everyone in attendance is expected to adhere to the rules of decorum established by resolution of the City Council. Failure to abide by the city's rules of decorum, including any disruptive behavior that interferes with our ability to have an orderly and efficient meeting, prevents the City Council from conducting the business of the city. Consider this a first warning to everyone in attendance that conduct that disrupts this meeting may result in expulsion and/or the chambers being cleared. Behavior that disrupts the meeting includes repetitive statements, going off topic, shouting, outbursts from the audience, and surpassing the 2-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, would you please read the next item?
Presentations item 4A, proclamation to Jessica Banuelos, Donation Development Coordinator, and Kathy Vochoka, Regional Lead Ambassador for the One Legacy Foundation, declaring DMV Donate Life Month in Bakersfield during April 2022.
Well, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here. And colleagues, we get to celebrate this every year. I am so grateful to the One Legacy Foundation for their service to our community, their continued efforts to promote the importance of donating. And so it's my honor at this time to be joined by Kathy Vasaka, Regional Lead Ambassador, and I have the privilege of reading this proclamation. Whereas organ tissue, marrow, and bone donation are life-giving acts, recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need, and more than 106,000 individuals nationwide and more than 20,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list. And whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestines can save up to 8 lives, and donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others. And whereas a single blood donation can help 3 people in need of blood, and the decision to donate is not restricted by age or medical condition, and whereas over 17 million Californians have signed up with the state-authorized Donate Life California Donor Registry to ensure that their wishes to be organ, eye, and tissue donors are honored, and whereas California residents can sign up with Donate Life California Donor Registry when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID cards or the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, therefore, I, Karen Go, Mayor of the City of Bakersfield, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as DMV Donate Life California Month in our city, and encourage all Bakersfield residents to check yes when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card by signing up online. And it's dated today's date, the 6th day of April, 2022. It's my honor to be able to present this to you. Thank you so much for all your advocacy and all your efforts.
I'd like to just, first of all, thank Mayor Go and the council members for recognizing this April as Donate Life Awareness Month, because for those of us who've been touched by organ and tissue donation, it means a lot to us. So if I can, I'd just like to tell you how I became so passionate about this. My son was 20 years old, getting ready to start his junior year at Cal Poly, was home in Bakersfield working. He woke up and his ankles were huge. Of course, mom's panicking, sent him to our primary care doctor. 2 days later, they called my son and told him he was in kidney failure. And we were just like, what? How can you just wake up and be in kidney failure? We don't have kidney disease on either side of our family. Our son was very healthy up until that point. So he was sent to a kidney specialist who confirmed the diagnosis. He began some heroic efforts, even though he said it was pretty much probably not going to work, to see if he could get my son's kidneys going again. 10 days later, we're back in the doctor's office, and as his mom, I will never, ever, ever forget that doctor walking in and walked up to my son and just said, "Chris, I'm so sorry, but you're not responding." And the really hard part for me to tell you is, unless you begin dialysis, you will die. You have to start dialysis. 2 hours later, we're at Adventist Health, where they put a tube in his chest so that he could begin dialysis 8 o'clock the next morning. So this all happened within 14 days. I remember seeing that tube hanging from his chest and him attached to that machine and looking at that machine and thinking, that is the only thing that is keeping my son alive. So to make a long story short, when I found out that you could be a living donor, I was like one of the first to let's get this done. I'm on it, And so after about 3 months of intense testing, I found out I was a good enough match. I wasn't a perfect match, but I was a good enough match. And last week, we just celebrated 11 years of him not having to do dialysis. Yeah. Oh, thanks. But real quick, I want to point out that there's, like you said, there's over 20,000 people in California that need some kind of life-saving transplant. But the shocking thing is 88% of those are kidneys. And if you look at the sheet that I provided to you guys on the back, I actually found out some data from our own city. And of the 245 people that in our city that need a life-saving transplant, 81% of them is because of kidneys. So there's a huge need. So I encourage everyone here and people watching on Zoom, please, if you're not a registered organ donor, consider it. And maybe you can be somebody's hero. So thank you again for your support. It means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, not my papers.
Now it's time for public statements. In keeping with Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into 2 periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda and items not listed on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on tonight's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. The consent calendar as a whole constitutes 1 agenda item. Statements regarding items not listed on the agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the council. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and give your completed card to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on tonight's agenda or a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify the agenda item on which they wish to speak will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. If you're here on consent calendar hearing items 8A or B, or public hearing item 9A, now is not the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity to speak when that item is called later in the meeting. Hearing item 9A, the 6th public hearing regarding redistricting ward boundaries will be heard at 6 p.m. pursuant to California Elections Code 21628C. When you fill out your speaker card for the public hearing, please state whether you are in opposition or in favor of Ward Map 5B. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council cannot take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on tonight's agenda?
Mayor Go, 1 speaker card has been received.
Thank you. And would you call that speaker, please?
Dennis Fox, regarding item 7V.
Thank you. And Mr. Fox, would you just wait a minute till we have all our guests seated, please? If you have a seat that's open next to you, would you raise your hand, please? Mr. Fox?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council and staff.
Can you move the mic a little
Need to
closer?
raise it up a little, or lower me. Thank you. Look at item B, and that has to do with Proposition 218. That's one of those arcane things everybody forgets what they're about after they get passed. And it has to do with You're not supposed to tax folks unless they get a benefit out of it. And we're in a situation that we do that here. People who have property owners, and it goes on your property tax in greater urban Bakersfield, buy water from the state for other people. They may be local, they may live 1,000 miles. Some of the best ones live in Beverly Hills, and rightfully so, since they're getting that deal. That's why I like to bring up, it's called zones of benefit on your tax. And these zones of benefit, supposedly we're getting the benefit of somebody else getting the water, because obviously they drive over here and go to the mini mart and shop. That's about what that, So I'd like to let you know about that. It cuts down the fact that we have water. Because of the focus on getting the freebie, we're not getting water. Obviously, we want to buy somebody else's water from Northern California, and they're not too happy with that. And you don't get it. So, mainly, it has to do with real conservatism.
Thank you,
We're
Mr.
so
Fox.
conservative,
Your time is up.
we're not ready for capitalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for items not on the public agenda?
Mayor Go, we've received 17 speaker cards regarding items not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Go ahead and call them. And maybe you can just call two so they'll be prepared.
I apologize, Mayor. That's 7 speaker cards. The first 2 speakers, Ryan Nance and Jacob Tudor.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Ryan Nance with the Carpenters. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Ryan Nance, and I'm a resident of Bakersfield. We're here tonight to share some information regarding tax fraud, hence the shirts. It's estimated that construction tax fraud is responsible for cheating communities out of millions of dollars in tax revenue. Those dollars lost could be used for building and renovating schools, repairing roads, caring for veterans, sheltering homeless, and funding other essential public programs. The prevalence of construction industry tax fraud has reached crisis levels and must be stopped. From April 11th through the 16th, Carpenters Local 661 and the United Brotherhood of Carpenters are taking part in the National Tax Fraud Days of Action, a week-long series of events to raise awareness about construction industry tax fraud. The Tax Fraud Days of Action grew out of widespread outrage about construction industry tax fraud, a range of practices where employers evade their tax responsibilities in several ways. Often, they intentionally misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay workers in cash-only arrangements. As a result, these businesses significantly reduce their income tax and payroll tax responsibilities and defraud communities out of much-needed tax revenue. And now, as communities are facing budget shortfalls due to lost sales tax revenues, it's more important than ever to crack down on criminal contractors who are stealing from the residents of Bakersfield. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Nance. Next speaker, please.
Jacob Tudor, followed by Jorge Torres.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, council members and staff. My name is Jacob Tudor, and I am a resident of Bakersfield. Construction industry tax fraud punishes good, fair-minded construction firms who cannot compete with the low road labor cost of fraudulent businesses. These bad actor employers are undercutting their competition by defrauding workers and absorbing a labor force that could be working for a legit construction firm. We are tired of seeing our construction partners being cheated out of hiring hardworking people. It's more than time that we all work together to get these toxic, bad actor employers out of Bakersfield so we can all go on and build fairly, equitably, and successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tudor. Next speakers, please.
Jorge Torres, followed by Samira Casillas.
George
Welcome.
Torres. I'm with the Carpenters. Good evening, council members and staff. My name is George Torres, and I'm a resident of Bakersfield. When employers shift their tax burden onto their employees, employees must then pay their employer's employment taxes out of their own pockets, which places a huge financial burden on working families. Also, when employees aren't on the books, they're on the hook if they get sick or injured on the job and cannot work, with no health care benefits or workers' comp provided. The prevalence of construction industry tax fraud has reached crisis levels, and bad actors, employers, are preying on vulnerable workers. From taking advantage of our immigrant populations to undercutting the competition, these bad actor employers are defrauding our working families and our communities by doing business that only fattens their wallets. Where you might look to see some of these practices on a local level is in the residential industry. Workers are being classified as independent contractors with 1099 forms. They continue to perform work with no real contractor license issued by the California State License Board. Enforcement and worker protection laws are needed to ensure local tax dollars are generated back into our communities. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. If you have a seat open next to you, would you just raise your hand? Brianna, I see you out there. We're going to run out of seats pretty shortly. Oh, maybe not. I was just going to ask you to help monitor. We'll just ask that you all be seated now so that we can get started. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening to you all. My name is Samira Casillas. I am chair of the Youth Coalition Students Working Against Tobacco, SWAT for short. I attend Golden Valley High School, and I am here on behalf of the youth of Ward 1 and 7. I am thankful for the opportunity to briefly discuss some of the issues surrounding youth vaping and smoking that I have noticed here in our community. Personally, I'm sad to say that this coalition only became a passion of mine after my little brother was offered a vape on the bus home. He was in middle school. And even though he didn't accept it, it was another middle schooler offering it to him in the first place. These instances are not rare or unheard of. I go to a school where they lock half the restrooms as a form of prevention, but it isn't solving anything because the problem is still there. There are still kids smoking and vaping. There's still vape waste from disposable vapes found hidden in the corners of classrooms. There's still no one in our community truly addressing this issue. The negative effects surrounding smoking and vaping are seemingly endless. According to a local young adult tobacco purchase survey conducted by Kern County Public Health in 2020, 39% of Bakersfield retailers near youth-sensitive areas are selling tobacco products to minors. 39%. This figure is hazardous to our future since it signifies that we are being targeted on our way to school. We want to be a part of the change that ends the cycle of youth addiction to nicotine in our community. So us as a coalition have researched ways our local community can solve this problem. A simple local tobacco retail licensing ordinance, for example, can put a buffer zone of 1,000 feet to not allow new retailers from selling vapes and other tobacco products near our schools, our parks, and other youth-sensitive areas. I only ask if I may send you some of these resources we have compiled to aid you in addressing these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Casillas. I would love to connect with you and connect you to some other people. We have some council members who'd like to offer some comments, but if you just stay there, I'm going to bring this down in a minute. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to refer it over to my committee, Legend Lit, and to see if we can do something there. But I'm also going to ask staff. I know in the past we've done targeted enforcement with Vice and partnering with the county, maybe alcoholic beverage control, along with the state within CDPH. And if we can maybe look at all avenues and all prongs to be able to take a multiple faceted approach on this, I'd sure appreciate it. Thank you so much for your comments. They're greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Councilmember Arias.
Beat me to it. Samira, I want to thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure to work with you through Leaders in Life and see you grow and thrive, and excited for your future as you head off to college. That was a fabulous presentation, by the way, with tons of knowledge and expertise, attributed to all of the research that you've done through students working against tobacco. I know that you work regularly with the county health department on these issues and have developed a true understanding of where we need to go, what the issues are right now. And I think that Councilmember Parlier is absolutely correct. There's certainly an opportunity for us to do better as a city and be a better partner with the county to make sure that we are keeping these routes to school as safe as possible. So with that, I would actually respectfully ask my colleague, Councilmember Parlier, if you'd be interested in sending this actually to the Safe Neighborhoods Committee so that we could work on it together.
Wonderful. Safe neighborhoods.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if I may, as the information sharing is taking place, we received a prior referral from Councilmember Arias to do research and analysis on this issue and have provided a memorandum to council around this ordinance. And rather than start from square one with the two referring council members, if we can just bring forward the potential ordinance to committee as researched, we'd be prepared as staff to do that.
That'd be great.
Thank you. And now the next speaker, please, and just prepare the following one, too.
Mayor Go, before I call the next speaker, I did want to announce that a staff memorandum was provided regarding non-agenda item public statements, transmitting emailed comments received. The next public speaker is Jennifer Morones, followed by Michelle Timmerman, and then Randall Tisdale.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Morones. I attend Golden Valley High School, and I'm here on behalf of the young in my community. From Bakersfield Wards 1 and 7, our youth community SWAT, Students Working Against Tobacco, works with and teaches the youth about the consequences of tobacco use. One of the most important factors is education. A well-educated community is more likely to succeed. Many students are unaware of the health risks associated with tobacco use. When you're a student trying to go to the bathroom and there's a lingering smell from vapes, it's heartbreaking. Students who have never used a vape or smoked are subject to the consequences of harmful effects on their lungs. Vapes are marketed as being safe for students. However, they contain more nicotine than a typical cigarette, making it highly addictive. This is why I'm asking for your help. Other cities such as Arvin, Delano, Shafter, and Taft have taken action, enacted a tobacco retailer provision to address and assist their youth community in avoiding and limiting tobacco access. Why has our city fallen behind in this regard? As the most populated city with a large number of youths who represent the community's future, it is critical to protect them from nicotine addictions, to provide a safe environment in the two most visible places, schools and parks. The solution to this problem is a tobacco retailer license that also prohibits new retailers from being located within 1,000 feet of any school, churches, daycares, and other youth-sensitive areas. Bakersfield Youngs are in urgent need of your leadership and your attention to this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morones. And next speaker, please. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Just real quick, this item's already been referred, but I want to acknowledge our last speaker and just tell her job well done, too. Thank you.
Michelle Timmerman, followed by Randall Tisdale.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Go and council members. My name is Michelle Timmerman, and I live in the northwest part of Bakersfield, Ward 4. I am here to ask that your council consider rerouting a section of the multi-use trail along the Friant-Kern Canal that would run between the intersections of Olive Callaway and Snow Road. This section of the canal is completely concealed from sight, with homes on both sides of the canal. My home is one of many that would be impacted by this trail. Having this trail run between homes where law enforcement cannot see any activity taking place makes it an ideal location for homeless and other individuals to gravitate to, posing a direct threat to the safety of the residents as well as potentially impacting our home values. Although this area of the canal has locked gates, there have already been incidents involving homeless in the canal, including a tent encampment, which I reported to BPD. I have also made several reports to the section that runs along Hageman, which is an area I travel to and from work. These reports varied from homeless individuals in carts to a fire that had been started in the canal. Currently, the gate to the canal located at Olive Callaway and Hageman have been cut, allowing access into the area. If these issues are already occurring in a secured area, one can only assume that incidents will increase once the area is completely open to 24/7 access. When I initially heard about this project in 2018, I contacted my council member, Bob Smith, to share my concerns. Sadly, Mr. Smith showed absolutely no interest in hearing my concerns and actually laughed when I shared with him what had happened along the Santa Ana Riverbed in Orange County, my hometown. I've also spoken with BPD officers who covered the beat that this trail would fall under. He advised that they were already experiencing issues with homeless in the canal, and to quote this officer, "I can see this becoming a freeway for the homeless." I had conversations with individuals at BPD, Bureau of Land Management, and City Planning. Each person I spoke with shared that this is not something they would want behind their home.
Thank you, Ms. Timmerman.
Thank you.
Bring
Can
your
I
comments
leave
to a
these?
close.
Can I leave these?
Go ahead and give them to the city clerk, please. And thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Go, we have an additional 3 speakers. Emma De La Rosa, Melanie Scher, Candace Webb.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Randall Tisdale. I live in the Northwest also. This mixed-use bike path is definitely not a good idea, especially between what Michelle had said between Olive, Callaway, and Snow. You cannot see from one end to the other. It's going to be a problem with homeless. I can see that already. We've already called on several occasions, and I wish that there were other council members that had homes in this area, because it's definitely going to be a problem. I wish you'd reconsider, at least run it down Callaway to Snow, but not find the 2 sets of homes. Not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Good evening. Emma De La Rosa, Regional Policy Manager with Leadership Council. I am here to bring up the Transformative Climate Communities Program. As you all may know, and just in case our audience does not know, the Transformative Climate Communities Program can bring $30 million to the city of Bakersfield, specifically for the communities of Oleander, Sunset, Lakeview, Old Town Kern, and these funds are meant to be used in disadvantaged communities to address the climate change impacts and to mitigate, of course, the climate change impacts, and most importantly, to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that we see here in our community. This area that was selected for the TCC boundaries is one of the most polluted areas in the Bakersfield area, and it can provide some much needed environmental, economic, and health benefits to the communities that have not seen any investment in very, very long. As you may know, the application is due July, and that date is coming up very quick. The pre-proposal is due April 22nd, and we have not heard from the city in terms of what next steps are coming up. And I urge you to please ensure that we are starting to work on this project because we have very, very few months. And the entire process needs to go through community engagement, including the pre-proposal. I know that the technical assistance survey was already submitted, but even that piece should have been in collaboration with community members. I must remind you that there is an anti-displacement plan that needs to be developed. That there is supposed to be a collaborative structure that needs to be developed. A lot of moving pieces that's going to require a lot of time. So I please urge you to ensure that we start working on this ASAP. And of course, thanks to Cecilia Grego for all her work on this program. I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. De La Rosa. Next speaker, please.
Melanie Schur, followed by Candace Webb.
Welcome. Good evening. Hi, my name is Melanie Scheer, and I am the founder of SNP, the Spay Neuter Imperative Project. SNP is a 501(c) nonprofit. My board receives zero compensation, and we provide low-cost, free mobile spay neuter to communities in need, and we have fixed over 2,000 animals here in the city of Bakersfield in less than 2.5 years, and over 4,000 animals in Kern County. I personally and many others in the city of Bakersfield have been giving grant money to help Bakersfield citizens with low-cost mobile spay and neuter clinics aboard SNP. When we post on social media for Bakersfield, we literally are completely overbooked for 2 clinics in less than 2 hours. Our phones never stop ringing. We help serve your veterans, your homeless, field workers, and low-income residents. I am asking the City Council to be part of the solution and support SNP. It's not just about giving all of the funding to the shelter. That is simply chasing our tails. We cannot rescue our way out of this mess. Your shelter is filled to the brim every week, and it's code red week after week. Trust me, I know, because SNP has been the only one fixing your pets in your shelters for the last 2 years. I'm requesting to be on the agenda for funding 4 clinics a month in the areas in need throughout the city of Bakersfield for the fiscal 22-23 year. SNP can fix approximately 100 to 120 pets within those 4 clinics. The clinics are $3,500 each. That's $14,000 per month, $168,000 per year. That breaks down to approximately $125 per pet per clinic. Basically, it costs the city of Bakersfield taxpayers more to capture, house, feed, and kill these animals than it does to hire SNP for these mobile preventative solutions in your areas of need. Kern County is currently spending $350,000 with SNP regarding mobile spay and neuter, but these clinics are only for county
Thank you.
residents.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, would you call the next speaker, please? Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Melanie, for coming down and visiting us today. I think this is a common sense, proactive measure that we could be taking. I remember that the county, we as a county rather, took great pride in being a no-kill county for many, many months, over a couple of years, I believe. And we recently had to end that, I believe, during the pandemic, unfortunately. And I think this is a common sense measure that we could take as a city to get us back to that. So if I can ask you to leave your contact information with staff and work with them to see if we can work something out. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
Candace Webb.
Hi, my name is Candace Webb. I am a resident here in Bakersfield, have been my entire life. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Melanie talked about. So spay and neuter offered to the public for free or low cost reduces the cost for city and promotes public safety and improved animal health. Unaltered animals roam to find mates, and aggression is increased in these animals. Higher incidence of attacks, bites, and chasing the public all happens when animals have an increased urge to roam. Spaying and neutering these animals increases safety for public, especially children. We've all heard of children getting chased on their bikes, on their way home from school, and most of these are because of increased aggression by unaltered animals looking for a mate and running around their neighborhoods. So all these animals that are roaming around are the ones that end up in your shelter and incur the cost of spay and neuter at the shelter anyway. If we're providing these services to the public to where these animals are being spayed and neutered before they end up in the shelter, you're preventing more overpopulation that leads to more of these animals that are roaming. On average, 6 million animals enter the U.S. shelters yearly. Only 10% of these animals are already spayed and neutered. Okay, if we are spaying and neutering more animals in the public, then it's going to reduce the cost for the shelter, which reduces the cost for the city long term. Of those 6 million animals taken into the shelter, 3 million of those pets will be euthanized, and only 700,000 of those 6 million will be returned to their previous owners. City of Bakersfield Animal Care and Control is already using us to do the majority of their spay and neuter. This is something that you guys are already incurring the costs in addition to the housing, the care, and sometimes eventually the euthanasia of the same animals that we have already spayed and neutered. Pets that are in households that have not been spayed and neutered incur more medical issues that lead them to be turned into the shelter, and then the shelter to deal with those increased medical issues. It does take 5 years of providing spay and neuter solution to the public in order for the intake numbers in the shelters to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. We will need to start our hearing for the redistricting at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to ask the interpreters to make your way up here. Just make your way up here, and then I'll make a few comments and then turn it over to you. And again, welcome to all of you. We're so glad to see all of you here tonight. We have interpreters present for the Spanish and Punjabi languages. I will now call on them to give instructions for those who need their services. Please see the interpreters following the instructions if you need a headset. So go ahead and interpret into both languages, please.
Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a la reunión. Para esta reunión tendremos interpretación al español en tiempo real, así es que será simultáneo. Si usted necesita interpretación, si tenemos diapositivos justo a la entrada de este salón, podemos ayudar y de esa manera usted podrá escuchar esta reunión en español. Es muy fácil de usar el equipo y podemos asistir a través de esta reunión.
Thank you. You get closer to the microphone too, please.
Sorry, so I'm going to repeat in English, and then Prayamjeet is going to say in Punjabi. Good evening, everybody. We do have simultaneous interpretation available tonight. To receive simultaneous interpretation, we do have devices that are set up so that we can do it in real time. If you do need interpretation equipment, we do have it right at the entrance, and we would be more than happy to set you up so that you can hear this meeting in your language of preference. Tonight we do have Spanish and Punjabi available.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇਸ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਉਣ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਦੁਭਾਸ਼ੀਏ ਅਤੇ ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਦੁਭਾਸ਼ੀਏ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਆ। ਸੋ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲ ਆ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟਰ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਡਿਵਾਈਸਿਸ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਈਮਲਟੇਨੀਅਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਉਹ ਟਰਾਂਸਮੀਟਰਸ ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਡਿਵਾਈਸਿਸ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਰੈਡੀ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੇ ਸਕੀਏ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ।
Thank you. And then interpreters, would you ask those who would need interpretation and need the devices to go up now and meet you back there and get the devices? And we'll just pause for a minute.
Si alguien necesita interpretación al español, si gustan acompañarnos en la zona de atrás del salón, estamos más que felices de ayudar, asegurar que todos los que necesiten interpretación la tengan esta noche. If anybody does need interpretation at this moment, please follow us to the back, and we will make sure that you are set up with interpretation for the meeting.
ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਡਿਵਾਈਸ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਣ ਲਈ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹ ਡਿਵਾਈਸ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰ ਸਮਝ ਸਕੋ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ
Go ahead and follow to the back if anybody needs interpretation. Just a helpful reminder for all of those presenting and giving comment today. For the benefit of our interpreters, we just ask that you pace yourself and speak clearly into the microphone during your comments so that the interpreters would be able to translate clearly your message. So our next item is public hearings, which involves redistricting for the new ward boundary lines in the city of Bakersfield. Based upon city council direction, city staff will present one draft map for adoption. Speakers will be allowed 30 minutes to speak on the draft map. Each side will have 15 minutes to speak in opposition and in favor. Each speaker will be allotted 2 minutes to give their statement. The time to speak will be doubled up to 4 minutes for monolingual speakers that need translation. It's important that you identify yourself, make your statement succinctly so others may speak. And we'll hear statements from those opposed to Ward Map 5B first. Then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in support of Ward Map 5B. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the TV screens behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone, identify yourself. When there's 14 minutes left on each side, a yellow light will come on. At the end of each side, a red light will flash indicating your time is up and quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be addressed until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give them to the clerk. She'll give copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. Madam Clerk, please read the public hearing item.
Hearings item 9A to be held 6 p.m. pursuant to California Elections Code section 21628C. Sixth public hearing regarding adoption of ordinance amending Chapter 1.12, revising the boundaries of City Council Wards 1 through 7, Ward Map 5B. First reading of ordinance was March 16th, 2022.
Thank you. And I see staff recommends council adopt the ward boundary ordinance for Ward Map 5B. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll provide just a brief summary of actions to date to set context for this, and Brianna Carey, your assistant to the city manager, will do that for us.
Thank you. Welcome.
Great, thank you, City Manager Clegg. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, come before you for the last time on our schedule to go through the adoption of the city's new ward boundaries. So again, this is the last public hearing that we have as part of our process. My presentation will be relatively brief tonight. We'll go over the proposed map 5B, have time for public testimony, have council comment, and of course, council action. Just reviewing the timeline for the public record's sake as well. We're now at that second to last row today, Wednesday, April 6, 2022, being the second reading of the ordinance adopting new ward boundaries. That last row there once more, Sunday, April 17th, 2022 is the technical deadline for adopting our new ward maps. It is a state deadline, but for our purposes, our final adoption will take place tonight. I will just make a few comments on the map that is under consideration, map 5B, just to quickly go through some of the history of where this map came from. Again, this was a map submitted by the public, initially entitled the Unity Map. It was then revised per council direction and provided through our consultant redistricting partners. So this map was developed in tandem with the community, in tandem with council comment and direction, following traditional redistricting guidelines, as well as communities of interest feedback. Going through each of the wards individually, just to get a sense of their population and their new boundaries. This is the new Ward 1 boundary, Ward 2 boundary, Ward 3 boundary, Ward 4 boundary, Ward 5 boundary, Ward 6, and Ward 7. Do not have many other comments for you tonight, just that the city will continue to maintain the city's redistricting website per the California Elections Code for the following 10 years. That is, of course, on the city's webpage under the City Clerk Department section of the website. All of this information in our process so far has been documented online as well. And just pause at the end of this process, as a staff member, as City Council, I hope that you'll allow me to just thank you as Council for your direction, thank our consultants, redistricting partners, for the work that they've done with us on this process so far. All of our map authors that we received feedback from our 7 publicly submitted maps over this process, and of course the community and the media for also spreading the word and being involved so far. Staff recommendation is that Council adopt the ward boundary ordinance for Ward Map 5B. That is the conclusion of my presentation and would open for the public hearing item.
Thank you, Ms. Carrier. We appreciate all of your efforts. Before I open the public hearing, I'm going to ask the interpreters to once again come forward to give instruction for those who may need their services to make a public comment. And while they're coming forward, I'm just going to remind the audience, I know that there's a lot of passion in the room about this topic, but just a reminder that we will ask you not to disrupt the meeting by clapping or by talking or cheering. That way we'll just be able to conduct the meeting and we'll be able to hear everyone. Interpreters, would you please just give instructions to the public for public comment? Thank you.
Si usted desea hacer algún comentario en español, cuando usted venga al podio, nosotras vamos a venir junto con usted y podemos ayudar a asegurar que interpretemos tal y como usted diga su palabra esta noche. Así es que le invitamos a que se sienta libre de participar en su lenguaje de preferencia. When you are ready to give public comment, if you would like to make your public comment in either Spanish or Punjabi, we would be more than happy to come up to the podium alongside you and make sure that we give you the opportunity to speak in your language of preference. After you have spoken in your language of preference, we can interpret. We do ask that you maybe give 2 or 3 sentences at a time, give the interpreter the opportunity to interpret, and then continue with your comment. And we can keep doing that until you finalize your comments. Para los que hagan comentario en español, les pedimos solamente den unas 2, 3 frases a la vez. Denos a nosotros los intérpretes la oportunidad de interpretar y de esa manera aseguraremos que su comentario sea escuchado en su totalidad.
Thank you.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ। ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਕਮੈਂਟਾਂ ਲਈ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੋਲਣ ਲਈ ਇੱਥੇ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਾਤ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਡਿਲੀਵਰ ਕਰ ਸਕੋ। ਸੋ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਖੜੇ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ 1 ਜਾਂ 2 ਲਾਈਨਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬੋਲਣੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੇਟਰ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਨੁਵਾਦ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਸਕੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਂ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਨੁਵਾਦ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੁਣਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾ ਸਕੇ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ।
Thank you very much. And at this time, I will open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker cards?
Mayor Go, we've received 1 speaker card against map 5B and 16 speaker cards in favor of map 5B.
Thank you. So now is the time for those who wish to speak in opposition of Ward Map 5B. So we'll ask you to come to the podium, identify yourself, and then proceed. Would you call the first public speaker, please?
Reverend Angelo Frazier.
Welcome.
Mayor, City Council, Pastor Angelo Frazier. This is a summation of thought. Right before our very eyes, the racialization of America. The KKK would be thrilled with this new progressive tactic. Redistricting is resegregation under the threat of possible litigation. Gone is the time-honored principle of assimilation. Gone is the issue of character and self-determination. Gone is the diversity of thought not based on color. Gone is the ability of one race to represent another race. I have seen this before. I have lived this before, and I fear it's returning. The very ones who are voting for this are actually voting themselves out of office. This is ultimately about power control and using race as a shield to hide their objective. Tell them this is how it works. Tell them they are marginalized. Tell them that they can't do it on their own. Tell them that they can only be represented by people who look like them. Tell them to always be offended when it's not about race. The polite racism of white liberals penned by Martin Luther King has now become made universal, and the systemic racism is the catch-all phrase for which every ill is manifested. And yet God is in control. His truth will reign, and all lives will be that are exalted and decorated with human wisdom must find their end someday. Booker T. Washington said this: a lie doesn't become the truth, right doesn't become wrong, evil doesn't become good just because it's accepted by the majority. I just want to encourage you, I came out of segregation. I know what it looks like. This is resegregation once again. When I came to this city 30 years ago, I didn't look for a black community or a white community or an Asian community. I just looked for a community to be in, and that's what it should be about. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Frazier. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please. Do we have any others in support?
Mayor Go, that was our only speaker in support.
Thank you. And now, in opposition, I'm sorry. And now, Madam Clerk, now is the time for those who wish to speak in support of Ward Map B. Madam Clerk, would you please call the speakers?
Mayor Go, I'm going to call the first three speakers: Dolores Huerta, Jeff Heinley, Lori Pesante.
Thank you. And it's just a reminder to all, we have a number of people who would like to speak tonight, so we'll just ask you to be as succinct as possible, and then just make sure you raise and lower the mic so we can hear you. Welcome.
Mayor Go and City Council persons, my name is Dolores Huerta, and I just want to commend and thank you for giving the preliminary approval to the Unity Map 5B, because I think it is going to bring our community closer together and, of course, give representation to many people that have been left out of representation here in the city. So just thank you very much, and hoping that we will give the final approval to the Unity Map 5B. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huerta. Next speaker, please.
Jeff Heinley, followed by Lori Pesante, then Nadine Escalante.
Welcome, Mr. Heinley.
Jeff Heinley, retired city first responder. I thank you, Mayor, Council, staff, for all the hard work and the time vested into this process. I wanted to see this across the finish line because I know it's very important to a very large, significant portion of our community, a community that is very diverse, that is looking for representation, and I just wanted to be here in support of them, just like I was in support of them for 35 years as a first responder. I really care about this community. I care about all of you, and I think this is a fair map. I think it's a just map, and I want to just express my deepest and sincerest thanks for all of the hard work that everybody has been doing to make this map as pure and as righteous as possible. And so I'm not going to run out of time this time, Mayor, so you won't have to kick me out. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heinley. Next speaker, please. And can we
Lori
find a
Pesante.
seat for the gentleman in the back, please? Ms. Pesante, if you just wait 1 minute so we can get everyone seated, please.
Following Ms. Pesante, we have Nadine Escalante.
Just going to ask everyone who's standing, except the officers, to please sit down, and if there's an empty seat, just raise your hand.
And following Ms. Escalante, we have Raji Brar.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lori Pasante, and I am the Director of Civic Engagement for the Dolores Huerta Foundation. We have been helping folks to learn about redistricting for well over a year now, and the community has not missed a single hearing, a single community education session, a single opportunity to raise their voices. And I think just even in seeing the interpreters come up and at a Bakersfield City Council meeting, speak in Punjabi, speak in English, speak in Spanish is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. And the comments among people around me tonight and at the last hearing that they had never seen this before and how wonderful it was to see. And the leadership that I believe MAP 5B has generated in its creation is the same strength of leadership that we can count on for the next 10 years. And so with that, I yield the remainder of my time to the amazing community that clearly is here tonight in mass and is committed to the future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pasante. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Aideen Escalante. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you for considering MAP 5B. On behalf of me as a mother, on behalf of my 2 daughters that are at home, I had to bribe my daughters with dinner from Bill Lee's in order to be at this meeting because I was supposed to be cooking. But my daughters are sacrificing tonight for me to be here on behalf of this MAP. This is going to affect my daughters who are 14 and 18, their future. I'm here because this is so important to my children's future in this county and in this city. The role that all of us play for our children is imperative tonight, and what you guys are doing for your children, for your grandchildren, is imperative for tonight. We are making history for Bakersfield, and we have always been in negative history in Kern County and Bakersfield. Let's do something positive for once. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Escalante. Next speaker, please.
Raji Brar, followed by Rick Jaj, followed by Gurchara Singh.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Go, council members, Sade Sasangatanu, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. My name is Raji Brar, and I'll take this opportunity to thank the City Council for supporting MAP 5B. Our community truly appreciates you taking the time to listen to and understand all of our concerns. I cannot begin to tell you how elated the community is with this historic decision. And for me personally, as Nadine mentioned too, as a parent whose children are watching this democratic process unfold before their very eyes, it's very encouraging to see elected officials do what they are entrusted to do, and that is to be the voice for their people. So we appreciate what you have done so very much. And Sangat nu, I want to tell you, ਇਹ ਜਿੱਤ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿੱਤ ਆ, ਕਿਸੇ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ। ਆਪਾਂ ਐਂ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਤੇ ਏਕਤਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣਾ, ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ? ਜਕਾਰਾ ਛੱਡੋ।
Thank you, Ms. Brar.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Just a reminder that we don't allow applause. I know you're very passionate about it, but that's just our protocol here. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, Mayor Go, fellow council members and staff. My name is Rick Judge, and I am here in support of MAP 5B. And I just have a few quick comments, and all I would like to say is I would like to express my gratitude and my sincere thanks to this council for moving this map forward. We are all so proud to be here tonight, witnessing this historic event. This map hearing has been witnessed by Sikhs worldwide on news being broadcasted throughout our community. And I want to personally thank you for supporting the wishes of your constituents and want to say thank you for keeping the Sikh community whole. Thank you, and Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. Next speaker, please.
Gurcharan Singh, followed by Harveen Kaur.
Welcome.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hello everyone, my name is Gurcharan Singh. I am a long-time resident of Bakersfield and president of Bakersfield Sikh Punjabi Senior Citizen Association. I am here to thank you for your support of MAP 5B. As a resident and advocate for Punjabi Sikh senior citizen. I appreciate that you are keeping communities together. Thank you for your time and support for MAP 5B. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Next speaker, please.
Harveen Kaur, followed by Gurnur Kaur.
Thank you. And Ms. Carr, would you just wait until we have our guests seated?
No problem.
Welcome.
Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Good evening, members of the council and my beloved Sangatan community. What an amazing turnout again, right? 2 times is a charm. My name is Harveen Kaur, and I'm a lifelong resident of Eastside Bakersfield. And after graduating from Highland High School, I went on to UCI to further my education. And after 3.5 years, my education was halted due to COVID, and I returned very so happily home. And after many long years of drudging, okay, I got to go back home. I have to leave school. I was finally happy to return home to my family after so long. And, the return was ecstatic, and it was a homecoming like no other. So once I arrived back home to our beautiful Bakersfield, I was eager to get engaged and involved with our community. I was ready to get in the streets. Bakersfield is where I was born and raised. It's where my community is. It's where my family resides, my foundation, my home, my heart. And, as you can see, we are a community that stays united and supports one another relentlessly. So as many of our council members and mayor know, this past Sunday, the Sikh community hosted the Bakersfield Vaisakhi Nagar Kirtan after 2 long years. We celebrated the birth of the Khalsa, our community, the power of unity, and the passing of MAP 5B. We are extremely delighted and, of course, we cannot express our gratitude to our city council for prioritizing the needs of the community, keeping the Punjabi community together, creating 3 VRAs, and creating a historical change for the Bakersfield community. Thank you so much for all the hard work in building a better Bakersfield, a Bakersfield where we stand together and we embrace our collective power and uplift one another. Thank you for your time. Good evening. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Ms. Kaur. Next speaker, please.
Gurnur Kaur, followed by Rajit Singh, followed by Rajpal Singh.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Gurnur Bath. I live in Ward 7 and attend Ridgeview High School. Before continuing, I would like to thank the council members for voting MAP 5B and deciding to keep the Sikh community united. I was born and raised here in the heart of Bakersfield. And growing up, I've always been surrounded by people from my community. And I'm proud to say that I attend a school where there's the highest population of Sikh students. It brings me great joy to see the great diversity at my school and seeing everyone get along. Also, seeing so many faces from the Sikh community at my school makes me feel at home. I have always grown up amongst the beautiful Sikh community of Bakersfield, and it's very important to me that my community stays united in the future, because I want to live here in Bakersfield for many more years to come in life. And I want to see my community united in the many years to come, like it is united today. I want my younger sisters to also see our Sikh community united while growing up, like how I saw our community united from a young age. So therefore, I would like to make a humble request to our council members to stay firm on their decision to choose MAP 5B. I would like to thank everyone, especially Mayor Go, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you once again. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Ms. Kaur. Next speaker, please.
Rajit Singh, followed by Rajpal Singh, followed by Jatinder Singh.
Welcome.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Go, and to my Sangat behind me. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Ranjit Singh, and I am speaking here today thanking you for adopting Plan B. We ask that you please do not divide us as a community, as these district line is what keeps us whole. Keeping us together is a mean for equity and community empowerment. I see it in my home, my neighborhood, as I drive through the streets. of Southwest Bakersfield. And in my place of work as a small business owner, growing up in America, not seeing many like me when I was my daughter's age, compared to how our community has grown today is beyond what I can imagine. And I am proud to say I have a strong community behind me. Us staying united in constant support of one another is what makes this community so special. Thank you for time, and Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa and Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Next. Okay. We have a request for a 2-minute break, so if you just hold steady right there, we just need a quick. And I would recommend that you stay in your seats unless there's a real reason you need to get up. Would you all please sit down and let's continue the meeting? We're just going to ask for everybody to be seated so that we can continue. We're going to run out of time. Normally there's a 15-minute block, but because of this only happening every 10 years, I'm going to let all the speakers who have already turned in cards, but we're not going to accept any more because I know we're going to be over time. But Madam Clerk, now would you call the next speaker, please?
Rajpal Singh, followed by Jatinder Singh, followed by Himut Kaur.
Welcome.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Council member and our mayor, Kiran, thank you so much. We support 5B. And my name is Rajpal Singh. I live here in ward number 6. And I was working with the Kisan Morcha group when the Kisan Morcha came. Thus, we just like to support 5B. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Next speaker, please.
Jatinder Singh.
And if it's possible, while somebody's speaking, let's not have anybody enter the facility.
Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Mr. Singh, would you just wait a minute until everyone's seated, please?
Hello, Mayor.
Mr. Singh? Mr. Singh? Just wait 1 minute till everyone is seated.
Sorry for that.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Jatinder Singh, and I am long-time resident of Bakersfield with a career in transportations. Thank you so much for listening to our community and voting for MAP 5B. I am proud to now my children with life in a community that is kept together. We are so proud to be here tonight to see history happen. Thank you to Council for supporting the Sikh community. Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Next speaker, please.
Himut Kaur, followed by Rupi Kaur, followed by Surajit Dhaliwal.
Thank you. Ms. Kaur, would you just wait a minute till our guest is seated?
Of course.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello, esteemed mayor and council members. It's nice to meet you. My name is Himut Kaur Chatta. I am a freshman in high school, a member of the Punjabi community, and a member of the Jakar movement. Thank you for continuing to support MAP 5B. We are grateful beyond belief. We brought our cacophony of rejecting MAP 2C to the ears of you officials. We yelled, we screamed, and we did what we felt was right. Our community is one that feels and thinks. A human is also a combination of the two. What I mean to say is that we are one. We are a people that refuse to be separated, then, now, and for years to come. Getting involved in my community was the happiest thing that ever happened to me. I look into the crowd and I see me, my people, strangers in the general sense, but family to me. If Washington said we shall all sit under our own vine and fig tree, then I shall bring my people with me to what is mine. I'm sure anyone here would do the same. Please continue to support and advocate for the adoption of MAP 5B. Keep our communities together. Thank you. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Ms. Kaur. Next speaker, please.
Rupi Kaur, followed by Surjit Dhaliwal, followed by Deep Singh.
Good evening. And
Welcome. Go ahead and raise the mic just a little, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, and to the Sangat, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki. Hi, I'm Rupneet Kaur, and I go to Independence High School, and I'm currently a senior. I plan to attend UC Davis in the fall. I have lived in Bakersfield basically my entire life, and I want to thank the City Council members for voting for MAP 5B to prioritize the needs of not only the Punjabi community, but all minority communities. Ever since I was a kid, I remember my parents taking me and my siblings, my cousins, all my friends to the Gurdwara, or Sikh temple, on Stein and Wilson roads. Every Sunday morning, and we would do kirtan or sing prayers. I learned my Punjabi by going to the Sikh temple, and then years later, I was able to use what I learned to teach other younger kids how to read and write Punjabi or how to do kirtan. Sorry. I was able to help my community every week by serving food or helping teach, and along the way, I met some really great people. Thank you for keeping my community united. Good evening, and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Ms. Kaur. Well, next speaker, please.
Surjit Dhaliwal, followed by Deep Singh.
Welcome, Mr. Dhaliwal. Can you just wait until our guest is seated, please? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members and the staff. And my name is Surjit Singh Dhaliwal. I'm a log resident of Bakersfield, and also have a businesses over here in Bakersfield. And I'm here just to thank you for supporting to the council members on the 5B, and also here for this evening, for this historic evening actually, that I'll be a part of that. The Plan 5B is going to be passing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal. Next speaker, please.
Deep Singh, followed by Leticia Perez.
Welcome.
Esteemed Mayor, City Council members, community members throughout Bakersfield, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The finish line is finally here. You know, this has been a historic and an ongoing process. I want to, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate all of you for taking the time, listening to so many community members, participating, providing feedback, and really trying to do what's best for Bakersfield for the next 10 years and providing a map that really listens to community and tries to, as best as possible, tries to engage people with something for the future. I just wanted to, for the bottom of my heart, really thank council members I've had the chance to continuously engage with, who had opportunities for me to be able to speak with, those even of other opinions. Sometimes we landed similarly, sometimes we didn't, but this has just been an inclusive process that I really wanted to appreciate all of you for all your hard work. I did want to address just one point. I know there were some speakers that felt that this particular MAP 5B introduced in some ways segregation, but it could be nothing further than the truth. In fact, by no means do maps are determined. There's no ethnic one group that could actually determine the outcome in any election, and nor will it ever be the case. Council member Gray had shared before that really we're talking about values, and MAP 5B was just meant that communities can bring their voices together, really to share those values that make Bakersfield so unique and such a special place for all. Again, wanted to thank you all from the bottom of my heart to all our friends on the council, to, of course, the hardworking staff that has been, really kind of working this process, and of course to the mayor. Appreciate you all and look forward to continuing staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Welcome, Supervisor.
Mayor Go, thank you for the opportunity tonight. It was really an incredible delight to be with you and other members of this body on Sunday as we celebrated this incredible community that has, in my life, for a decade and a half, been absolutely family to me and so many others in the 5th District and so many members of this community. So I have to be honest when I say, when I look out here, I see me too. That's the truth. This is a beautiful community, and by that I mean Kern County. I have to be honest when I say that observing what this body did a few weeks ago has left me in a state of shock. I was not expecting it. I was hoping for the absolute best, but to see what happened amongst this body really, really moved me at my deepest core, at my deepest held values as an American and as a person in this community that believes that it is beautiful in all of its diversity and all of our diverse opinions and ideas. Andre and Eric, hats off to you. Outstanding work. I am so proud of you. To the gentleman here, Mr. Parlier and Bob, who I had a chance to spend some time with on Sunday, and express my gratitude to you for doing in this community what I think is brave, courageous, and absolutely consistent with the American spirit. You know, American democracy is unique. American democracy is exceptional. It is different. It's a bold, courageous act, and it takes people of your communities in particular, right, of standing and saying, this is okay. We don't have to be afraid. The American process is best when it is inclusive and absolutely consistent with the pillars of this country. So I want to express to you too specifically, thank you for giving me real-life today examples to brag around the state of California about the beautiful conservatives in this community that are working alongside communities that have many, many differences. It's what makes this place so beautiful. And I want to say to you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I had such a nice time with all of you on Sunday. I look forward to more of that. But this is our community. This is one community. And I'm happy to see me as I look at you today.
Thank you, Supervisor.
God bless you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Jenna Lee Furman, followed by Jason Wharton, followed by Traco Matthews.
Hello, Honorable. Hi, Honorable Mayor and City Council, as well as City staff, City Manager Clegg, and City Attorney. My name is Jenna Lee Fedmin. I'm not here on anybody's behalf except my own as a resident of Ward 4, as a proud resident of Ward 4. I'm here on behalf of myself, my daughter, my husband, my in-laws that immigrated here from Peru, and my family that immigrated here from Guatemala and El Salvador. The reason why my father immigrated from El Salvador over 30 years ago is because of democracy. He wanted to be here in USA where we actually had a voice, and I'm proud to be a first generation here actually using my voice. I'm here in support of the Unity Map, Map 5B. As I look into the crowd, I see representatives from Ward 7, Councilmember Parlier, Ward 6, Councilwoman Patty Gray, Ward 3, Councilmember Weir, and everybody else. This is the city of Bakersfield, and we need our maps to represent us. Interest groups from the Black community, interest groups from the Punjabi community and Sikh community, and the Latino community, and all the minorities. Because if you look around, I moved to the city of Bakersfield 20 plus years ago, and it's nothing from what it looks like now, today. I am so happy and so proud that now Latinos are a huge majority here in the city of Bakersfield. And so we have the right to have that representation on city council. So I ask you and I urge you, look out at everybody here today. We have spoken. We had one person against Map 2B. So please don't vote for yourselves, except for your people, your constituents that are here. Please vote for unity. Thank you so much for the honor.
Thank you, Ms. Fermin. Next speaker, please.
Jason Wharton, followed by Traco Matthews.
Welcome.
Good evening. All right. Here we meet again. Basically, I'm gonna keep it short. I just want to thank you once again for allowing us to bring MAP 5B to the table and really pushing it through. And just like you guys, I know is going to stand firm on allowing this map to go through. I'm standing firm on what I originally said with, I'm a part of this community. I've lived in this community over 12 years. My children went through elementary, junior high, and high school in this community. And it's been nothing but open arms, love, and unity. So, like I said, I'm gonna keep it short. Please stand firm on keeping this map going through, and the unity is what really, really matters. Because for the next 10 years, we're gonna have so much unity that Kern County can't help but grow in the right manner, in the right way. Like another speaker said, Bakersfield can get there. People do say things, negative about Bakersfield when it comes to race and racism. And this right here will show that we're not racist and that we are for family, we are for community, and we are for unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worthen. And the final speaker, please. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, distinguished members of the council. I was not planning to speak tonight, but I did want to briefly respond to something that my friend Pastor Angelo Fraser said. He said this is about segregation and regression. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think Exhibit A is all of the 20 speakers that you have seen tonight of every racial group represented in our city, in our community, in the ward that we are talking about, Ward 7. The 30 speakers that you saw 3 weeks ago. Diversity. Diversity is something that should be celebrated. As a nation, it is what has made us great. It is not segregation, but truly a valuing of the diverse voices of all of those, diverse people in our community who we know have God-given voices that must be heard, that must be valued, that must be respected. Thank you for doing what was right 3 weeks ago, moving it forward. Please have the courage to stand firm on what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. And at this time, is there anyone who wishes to rebut in opposition of Ward Map 5B? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to rebut in support of Ward Map 5B? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try and avoid getting emotional like I did last time, but still, this is just such a beautiful turnout and truthfully speaks to our democratic values. This is truly what democracy looks like. And I'm so proud and honored to sit on this dais and represent every single one of you and to embrace you and to hope that you come back for future council meetings because it's refreshing to see the public engage in this way. This is the way that it should be. And so I want to personally extend that invitation. We will have our budget meeting in the next couple of months, so please do come back. As it relates to redistricting, I want to tip my hat off to Ms. Brianna Carrier, her entire team, for enabling us to engage in this democratic process. And thank you to our redistricting partners, who I don't think are in the room tonight, for making sure that your voices were heard and you had an opportunity to go ahead and provide input and feedback for our council. Ms. Escalante, I don't know if she's still in the room, but she is absolutely right. Tonight is absolutely historic for our community, for our city, for our own families, and for the young lady who's sitting right in front of her. Whenever you're giving public speaking lessons, please invite me. I have a few things to learn from you. Well done. But truly, tonight is absolutely historic, and it is my honor tonight to stand with the Punjabi community, to stand with our Latino brothers and sisters, our African American community, and everyone in the city of Bakersfield. As we create 3 VRAs, we do more than just protect ourselves from liability, but we pass Map 5B, a map that truly instills pride in all of our communities. And with that, I would like to make the motion tonight to approve Map 5B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor.
I want to begin tonight by thanking everyone who, again, showed up tonight and who has been a part, a very influential, important part of this whole process. Your involvement, your letters, your texts, your participation here was significant and important and influential. And I just want to thank all of you for participating in this process. You know, I've been in elected office now for 12 years, 6 years on the Bakersfield City School Board, 6 years now on the Bakersfield City Council. And I can honestly say March 16th was the proudest moment I've had in all those 12 years. And it speaks to what we're doing in the city and the future of our community. I just want to do something, because there was a comment earlier that still bothered me. I want to ask everyone who supports MAP 5B to please stand up. Colleagues, this does not look like segregation. This looks like diversity. This looks like inclusion. This looks like a richer Bakersfield and a more prosperous future for all of us. And there's all these young ones out here right now. Elementary school students, junior high students, raise your hand. High school students. We're doing this for them. And we're building a better Bakersfield for all of them so that they can be more included. And this is not even a debate in 10 years from now. That's my hope. You can all be seated. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez.
So I just want to finish up. I'm sorry, Mayor. Just want to finish up my comments by joining Councilmember Arias in thanking Brianna Carrier for all of her support. But also I want to recognize Vidi Gallardo King with the City Attorney's Office, who's actually led the effort from the legal end, and she's done a tremendous job. So thank you so much, Vidi.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to pile on, I guess, and say that I've received overwhelming positive feedback since the last meeting, and the community is very excited about moving forward from this point, and that there's no doubt in my mind that a community that works together is much stronger, and this map helps the community work together. An engaged community is better. And so I think we celebrate all members of the community when we work together. And so I thank you, and it's a great time.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Gray.
Well, I want to start out tonight by thanking every one of you to come. It is a wonderful thing to see people participating in the democratic system, and we are very blessed in this country. We could all be in the Ukraine right now standing in line for a scrap of food. So I'm very blessed to be here. As you know, I did vote against the map, but I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, I'm not voting against a people or a people group. I felt in my own heart that the other map was the better map. But I do want to tell you that I heard tonight, again, from someone that finally there was going to be fair representation for everyone. And so I'm not trying to throw cold water on your party, but I want to just remind you that I was elected in a majority Latino ward with 3 men of color running against me. Because as Dolores Huerta said last week, people vote for who they want to vote for. So I would hope, I've heard that people are thrilled. Our other council members, they have had good feedback. But I want to remind you that this group of people in this room is a beautiful group, and I'm so thankful these seats are filled, and I pray that they continue to be filled. But there's 400,000 people in this city. 400,000. And I've heard from many people that they have very real concerns and are fearful that we will be divided instead of united. So the feedback I'm getting is a little bit different, and it's coming from all different skin colors and backgrounds. It's not just white, Caucasian men or women. It's from people of all different backgrounds. So I just want to tell you that I am here tonight to make the decision that I feel is the best decision. But it is not against anyone. It's not for anyone. It's just because I felt that the other map was a better map. And I pray that as we have focused this map so much on race, ethnic background, and color, that I pray that that does not end up being a divider instead of a uniter. I am here from the bottom of my heart to serve every color of every creed. And there will never be a time that I would ever turn anybody away because I didn't like their politics or their creed or their color. So I want you to know I am here to serve all. I think that's the way the Lord would want me to do. And I pray that everyone in this room can feel the same, that we are united and not divided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is called the Unity Map. You can call it the Punjabi map. You could easily call it the Chamber of Commerce map or the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce map or the Board of Realtors map or even the Associated Building and Contractors map. If not in full support, they were not in opposition. Now, I've had the pleasure of serving under two wonderful mayors, City of Bakersfield. Our current mayor, Karen Go, a wonderful representative of the city, but I started under Harvey Hall. And when I first came on board, I met with Harvey in his office, now the mayor's office, right over here. And he said, Chris, on the close ones, just do the right thing. And Harvey had a motto. In fact, he ran on that motto. It was called Unity in the Community. And Harvey is definitely on my mind right now, and I'm staying with 5B. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Are there any other requests to speak? Seeing none, you have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. With council... With Councilmember Weir and Councilmember Gray voting no, and Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And that concludes that section. If there's anyone who would like to leave at this point before we go on with the meeting, you're welcome to do so right now. Thank you for your participation. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Appointments item 6A. Appointment of one alternate committee member, Ward 5, to complete a term to expire December 2024 to the Keep Bakersfield Beautiful Committee due to a resignation. An application for appointment has been received from Edward Robinson.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilman Freeman asked me if I would nominate Mr. Robinson for this position.
Thank you. And is that a motion?
That is a motion.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And next item, please.
Appointments item 6B. one appointment at large to PSVS to complete an unexpired term due to the resignation of Donalda Biscar. Term expires February 2025. 4 applications for appointment have been received from Alan Avery, Bonnie Lyday, Lori Pasanti, Mary Madland.
Thank you. And as the city clerk provides ballots to the council, I'd like to clarify the public voting process. Although the council will use ballots, the outcome of the vote will be made public by the clerk. Based on these results, the council will then make the appropriate motion regarding each appointment. Following the council meeting, the individual ballots will be available for public review in the clerk's office. Just turn in your ballots towards the middle, please. Oh, and remember to mark your ward if you haven't.
Mayor Go. Mary Madland received the most number of votes at 3.
Thank you. And so do we have a motion, Vice Mayor?
I move we appoint Mary Madland.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Madeline, for your willingness to serve. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Appointments item 6C. One appointment, Ward 1 regular member to the Youth Commission to complete a term to expire July 31st, 2023. One application for appointment has been received from Naomi Garcia.
Thank you. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish she could be here, but she is at her father's 40th birthday. Noemi Garcia is a wonderful individual who is currently a junior over at Golden Valley High School, and I'm excited to nominate her as my appointee to the Bakersfield Youth Commission.
And is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Thank you. You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Garcia, for your willingness to serve. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar items 7A through 7AA for approval.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Parlier has requested that 7Y be pulled for separate consideration, so I move items 7A through 7AA except for 7Y.
Thank you for the motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And now, Councilmember Parlier, 7Y.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the 3:30 meeting, we had a presentation on housing element update. Talked about the need for housing in Bakersfield, multifamily, et cetera. So Ward 7, I think, has arguably probably been one of the wards that has taken more multifamily as far as a change from R1 to multifamily since I've been on, and has continued to do so. The property that we're talking about was R1 and was converted over into multifamily. And staff and I, the developer, constituents, we had some conversations about that property. And we did some design changes and different things on it to try and make it better and more adaptive to the community and surrounding community. Now, when it was initially presented in June of 2021, staff presented it in one manner, and when it came the last council meeting, when I asked that staff take another look at this, it came kind of a different direction. And in my conversations with staff, they kind of readily admit that some missteps were made along that pathway. And I hope we do better in the future. So I am going to reluctantly make a motion that we accept staff recommendation, but I want to hold staff's feet to the fire on the promises that were made as far as the oversight of this project and the continued oversight of this development as it goes on into the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to recognize my colleagues' points. And Councilmember Parlier, thank you so much. I think you raised some very important points. You know, in that previous presentation at 3:30, it very clearly outlined the role of council members, that we are the conduit to our constituents and to the community in general, and that we often hear things because we are embedded in the community and their representatives. And I think it's important that we work very closely and in tandem with staff as these projects move forward, and that we're well aware of what these changes are early on so that we can be better stewards of our neighborhoods that we represent. And so I just want to thank you for your motion today, and thank you for those points.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Any other requests to speak? Seeing none, you have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. It's now time for the consent calendar hearings. The purpose of this section is to vote on all the items listed under consent calendar hearings in one motion without further comment. If anyone would like to speak on any of the items, the item must be removed from this portion of the agenda. If an item is removed, it will be placed at the end of the regular public hearing portion of the meeting. At this time, Madam Clerk, no, we will not need to read this. At this time, I'll open consent calendar public hearing items 8A and B. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to request that a hearing item be removed from the consent calendar? If so, please come forward. This isn't the time to take testimony, only to remove the matter. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar hearing? Seeing none, at this time, consent calendar public hearings item items 8A through B is closed. Vice Mayor?
Motion to approve both items.
Thank you. You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. And now, next item, please.
Reports item 10A, fiscal year 2022-23 PSVS proposed budget preview.
Thank you. City Manager Clegg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We keep saving the best for last in all these long meetings. Just as a reminder, we are not taking action tonight on this budget. This is just an opportunity to preview this information for the council, receive feedback, guidance prior to formulating our formal recommendations to the Oversight Committee and ultimately to the council as part of the regular budget process in June. To help set some context again, just for the public record, a reminder of the 13 priorities established related to the Public Safety Vital Services tax. And we provided recently a quick overview to the Oversight Committee of the first 3 years of this tax measure. And so I'm not going to spend a long time on this. Council's very aware of this, but wanted to take the public opportunity and create this for the public record, a reminder of the many important programs that are under Measure N. Includes the hiring of our officers. Big parts of that are not just our sworn staff on the streets, but also specialized units in community relations and quality assurance and traffic that we have been able to restore. Support personnel critical to keeping our officers on the streets. A new regional radio system, our new training facility, upgrades to our shooting range and property room. The entire body-worn camera program, ShotSpotter, our gun violence intervention program we've initiated, additional sworn fire personnel, including our rescue squads, and also upgrades to our stations that were long overdue. All that would not be possible without Measure N, and that's just public safety. Homelessness, the creation of the Brenda Lee Navigation Center. We have created hundreds of, or at least funded at this point, hundreds of units of affordable housing that are in process currently, and created the rapid response teams. I know there's levels of frustration still in the community related to homelessness, and we will not relent until we continue to make more progress. But just imagine if we did not have 2 or 3 teams out every day addressing encampments in our city. Also, many contracted services to help support homeless individuals and also the impacts of homelessness in our business districts. Related to fiscal sustainability, the city had very little reserves, and today we have healthy reserves that are compliant with the Government Finance Officers Association recommendations, and it is actually not just getting us on par with that recommendation, but many cities do not have a 16% reserve. We are fortunate in that regard. Also, we've started creating reserves for facilities. We're able to upgrade our ERP through this funding. Smaller dollar amounts, but high impacts. We've created a long-range financial tool, a legislative advocacy program, a risk assessment that's going to lead to a performance program, and many technology updates to help us modernize. Related to quality of life, we have our Clean City teams and the collection events getting at cleanliness of our city. If you'll recall, that first year actually had a number of plantings that were part of quality of life. Our regional parks are these subsequent phases are possible through PSVS, and our neighborhood parks, we've been able to touch nearly 20 neighborhood parks at this point. Our park rapid response teams also are funded through the measure, street lighting, and significant additions to code enforcement. Related to economic development, we didn't have a department. Now we do. We have development incentive tools. We've adopted a strategic plan. We're implementing an electronic permit system. We have added not large numbers, but a handful of staff to help with annexation and general plan update, and made important overdue upgrades to many of our venues. We have not spent as much on infrastructure. It'll be interesting to see some of the recommendations this time around, but have been able to spend some dollars on gateway and streetscape beautification, some complete street project design, and highway corridor hardscaping demonstration or pilot projects. Also, not many dollars here. When I say not many, I think in total about less than $500,000 total here over the full 3 years. But we are investing more in our employees and their skill sets around customer service, and we've created a help customer service team to get at constituent issues in a more consistent manner. And then lastly, as it relates to downtown and urban renewal, we've been able to set aside dollars for property acquisition, fund our economic opportunity areas with many more grants than otherwise we would have been able to, completed a street corridor study, created our downtown development program. We're also doing community revitalization through these dollars and some smaller items, but helping to create a sense of place around banners, security, and cleanup teams in the downtown. So again, that was a very quick overview, lots more depth and content beneath that, but wanted to just have that for the public record of the many ways that Measure N is impacting our community. We're working on a report that would put outcome measures and output measures by the end of the first 3 fiscal years for Measure N that we can share with the community to reflect on what those dollars have delivered for our community. But now moving on to the point of our report this evening, what about next year's budget for Measure N? This is the 4th full year of Measure implementation. We've been able to add a lot of the critical staffing and community needs through those initial phases. We've seen notable Measure revenue growth in the first 3 years, and again, continuing into next year. We've had a lot of focus on public safety and homelessness. If you look at the share of spending around public safety and homelessness, and to a degree parks in the first 3 years, much heavier in those areas. And economic development has a larger share than you would typically expect because we didn't have funding going to that historically. But there's a theme in this budget that as we continue to enhance public safety and homelessness response, there's some opportunity as we've set aside reserves and dollars for big projects like ERP, that we have some opportunities to look at infrastructure and quality of life in ways that we haven't been able to in previous years. I'm going to ask our Finance Director, Randy McKeegan, to walk through the next few slides to talk about our revenue projections.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members. Randy McKeegan, Finance Director for the city. As you've heard from City Manager Clegg, he reviewed many of the good projects, programs, and services we were able to fund over the last 3 years. So I'm going to be kind of looking at where we are with the revenue side, where we have been, and where we will be with the revenue, and at least expected revenue. So what you see here is a quarterly allocation of our revenue receipts over the last 6 quarters. And you see we have a steady revenue stream and actually a growing revenue stream. From the lowest period back in the midst of COVID, the 3rd quarter of 2019-20, when we had $15.3 million, we've seen continued growth in this revenue stream and expect to continue to see that growth. We've seen good performance in specific industries, most industries, but specifically general consumer goods, auto sales and transportation, fuel services stations. Restaurants and the hospitality industry have done very well over the last 6 quarters. In addition, I wanted to point out that for online sales, I think most of us know this, but the PSVS revenue, the sales tax revenue, actually allows us to get online sales directly. Unlike the Bradley Burns standard sales tax, those online sales are coming directly to the city, so that you'll see that gap of more revenue in the PSVS revenue versus the Bradley Burns because of the changing shopping patterns of the consumer. I think most of you probably know this, but in my house, we see more Amazon boxes in front of my door than I used to, and I think my wife continues to help with that side of the PSVS revenue. I'm supportive of it, at least I tell you that. So moving forward, we talked about the industries. Next slide. So we talked about the industry's growth, and this slide breaks out that industry growth for the last quarter. We have data from the fourth quarter of 21, calendar year 21, and so this shows where we're seeing most of that revenue. And you'll see that over a third of our revenue comes from general consumer goods. That is department stores, big box stores like Walmart, Target, warehouse stores like Costco, Sam's Club. Those continue to grow. From last year, we've seen a 13% increase in that particular stream of revenue, but again, it's over a third of our revenue. You see the second largest is about 20% of auto sales, both new and used. We continue to see that growth. We had a 14% increase from last year in that particular industry. But again, overall, we've had about a 14% increase, but the largest increase were actually in fuel service and hotels and restaurants. So I think we understand since the last quarter of the 21 at least, there was obviously more growth as we had the businesses opening up. So we had increases in service stations of 37% from last year and 32% in restaurant and hospitality. So those industries continue to grow, and we continue to expect them to grow again going forward. The next slide, please. So finally, here is where we have been and where we will be, or at least we're expected to be. We talked about, I think at mid-year, we talked about where we expected revenue at the beginning of the budget season of 21-22. We expected revenue about $78 million. Our current revenue projections, based on conversations and in consultation with our sales tax consultant, it's going to be closer to $99 million. And again, that sales tax consultant has given us projections for next year of a 2% growth, moving us up to $101 million in PSVS revenue going into next fiscal year. We obviously have to be cautious. We have continued growth over 10 calendar years. So the 2% growth is a conservative estimate, honestly. If you look at where we were the first full year of the revenue and then fiscal year 19 and 20, we've seen over a 36% increase, or close to a 36% increase from that first full year, 1920, to where we expect to be in this upcoming fiscal year. So that it continues to grow, but we are taking a measured approach. We're going to continue to watch the reports as they come in from the sales tax consultants as we go through the upcoming fiscal year. But most recent reports from them show that there isn't really a reduction in actual consumer activity, even going past this last fiscal year, a calendar year, I should say. So they're watching consumer goods, consumer purchases, and they don't see a slowdown even since the first 3 months of this calendar year. So again, we have to watch it. We'll continue to watch it, but based on evidence that we see, our consultancies, we don't expect that revenue to actually dip in the upcoming fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to the city manager to discuss those projected programs and planned uses of these funds in the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Randy. And I would just note that Mr. McKeegan does a very good job of making sure we stay conservative. And another way I think we could probably state that is our consultants are saying it's probably going to be a little higher, but we're playing it safe and keeping that conservative number at that 101. So again, looking at how do we leverage those funds going forward, proposals are related to feedback from the council, from oversight committee, from our public stakeholders, many fewer staffing requests than the past 3 cycles. I think we'll speak to this in some of our upcoming slides, but the amount of funding available for ongoing programs, of course, continues to shrink as we make some additions. There's still significant funding there, but I think we're at the point where we're going to begin holding a significant portion for those one-time type of projects and really limit our ongoing increases to the types of percentages that you would see on the general fund side, where you're maybe in the 3 to 5 to 7% range of increases, just based on the increases to annual revenues related to this source, similar to the general fund side. Those proposals are focused on major initiatives that are going to have a big impact. And as I noted earlier, we see, again, continued investment in public safety, significant investment still in our parks, and then infrastructure and beautification are on the table in ways that, again, we haven't been able to do historically. So we actually expect to have $113 million for appropriations. That's because we have $12.3 million in revenue that we project to receive that was unallocated. This is not unexpended year-end balances, because we know we always have those, and we measure those through our annual auditing process, and then they're available at mid-year if there are leftovers. But this is just revenues we're going to receive that we didn't, appropriate for. So this gives us some opportunity to do some more one-time allocations. It's good news that revenues are up, but so are costs, and that's something that we're keeping close in mind with 7% inflation, nationally. So last year, what was about $54 million in ongoing, turned into close to $3 million in ongoing. To do the same, to provide the same level of service, it was $60+ million, not $54 million. And then the increment from that number to the 67.5 is reflective of the additions we made at mid-year. And so that is the ongoing number. And so out of a budget that is a little more than $100 million, we have $67 million in ongoing. Because of the one-time monies combined with the amount above the ongoing amount, we have about $45 million to work with in this upcoming budget. So ongoing expenditures, as noted, is going to be much less. Some of this is positions, some of this is what we still call one-time operating. As you hire a new police officer, for example, we've outfitted their equipment, their offices, if be the case, or their vehicles. So the full ongoing number is not $7.9 million. It's closer to about half of that. But we are proposing some limited positions around public safety. The $1.8 million there we'll talk about, but that alone is increases to the operating costs for the Brundage Lane Navigation Center. And we have some small dollars around fiscal solvency, and then quality of life. We have a few examples to go into on that on the ongoing side, so I'll walk through each of those. On the public safety side, we have stood up our CalVIP program, funded in part by grants, but we're looking to expand that program. It's, we're now nearly 2 years into the full funding of that and looking to take it to the next level. Much of that can be done by contract with our community-based organizations, and we do plan to expand through grants and through ARPA funding our contracts with community providers. But there are 2 positions that we're requesting to play a role that we feel is most appropriate at the city level, and that is to be incident responders that would go out to crime scenes and the like, to start the relationship building and the intervention of individuals that have been victims of violence. There's been a half-time position grant funded, and we're looking to make that a full-time position. That's the second line there. Third is just the equipment for those 2 new positions. We are requesting 1 clerk in the Human Resources Department, given the ongoing emphasis on public safety hiring. It's been a big toll, and that position would be a dedicated position to help with the police hiring. There's also a background check software that's going to save significant time for staff that we're requesting. On the dispatch side, we've actually not been keeping up entirely, and so we have 4 on the police side and 2 on the fire side recommended to help us keep pace. And then on the fire side, there is a number of an increasing number of specialized equipment that we have to maintain, like their breathing apparatus and hazmat and the like. And this would be one position that would allow us to catch back up because we've fallen behind, and to keep up on the safety equipment of our firefighters. We're actually only requesting one police captain on the sworn side. We still have about 30 vacancies on the sworn side to fill, and so we're not asking for more this year until we complete that hiring. But on the civilian side, there's significant need for property and equipment specialists, as well as a performance analyst, to help support the law enforcement efforts and keep our officers on the streets. And because we've had an increase in officers and an increase in cases and arrests, we have more property than we can handle, and we're not keeping up. And so this would address some of those needs. And in consultation with Chief Terry, really on the support side is where they have the greatest needs in this cycle. In addition, on the support side, we're looking to up our game in analysis around crime analysis and having a lead role there. Right now, we just have crime analysts, some communications and clerk support as well. Interestingly, we did not actually budget for 100 vehicles when we set out on the hiring of 100 officers, because we knew there would be some lead time. And so there's actually 30 vehicles total still to be acquired. We're recommending 15 for this year, and then probably 15 in the coming year. Because of some of the positions that we requested, as well as some aging out of equipment, and then also because we're able to, with some of these support staff, we're actually able to get police service technicians back on the street instead of in the office. We need some new vehicles in those regards. We have used some different traffic technology tools, but we actually don't have those smart reader blinking signs you see in some communities, and we're looking to have a pilot to bring those here. And then we have done a pilot over this last year of having one mental health specialist in our dispatch center to take calls of those exhibiting behavioral health needs, and to see if we can really divert those calls to those individuals and address them. This pilot has been really successful. 25% of calls received by that individual have not needed to be dispatched out to patrol. So that means 25% less patrol calls going out and helping to reduce our call waiting times. We're recommending $400,000 to contract for 3 additional individuals, because that only was 1 individual on one shift. 3 individuals would put someone on every shift 24/7. And if we can reduce 25% on those other 3 shifts, very good return on investment. Lastly, there are some technology tools that the police department is looking to deploy that would have significant reductions of time in the field. Because of new reporting requirements of the state, it takes about 7 to 10 minutes after every call or every stop, every interaction, to log and register information from their body cameras and to complete a report. We're looking to acquire some software that would reduce that 7 to 10 minute time frame to 1 to 2 minutes per stop. And that, again, huge return on investment for the time of the officers. Lastly, we're using our video cameras or security cameras increasingly in our eyes and ears and force multiplier efforts related to public safety. But that's a lot of footage to review. And so there are actually new artificial intelligence tools out there that can help us identify when and where we need to go and have human eyes on the screen and save a lot of staff time in narrowing in there as well. Switching gears to homelessness, actually the only proposal this year on the ongoing basis, again, is the operating costs. This actually represents a 9-month time frame because we don't anticipate to be open for a full 12 months. It's actually more likely to be 6 months of operations. It looks like construction will complete in late fall. But to be conservative, we're budgeting about, or actually I think this is 8 months. This is 8 months of operating costs. On the finance side, we actually had one position that has already been approved in PSVS to support, again, the increased body of work created by hiring additional public safety staff. And this is a reclassification request to be more appropriate to the work that that individual is doing. But as it's a PSVS position, I wanted to be transparent and make that request through PSVS. Shifting gears to quality of life. On the code enforcement side, we've been able to staff up our regular code enforcement, but we have many special projects that we would like to tackle, like our substandard buildings, proactive code enforcement sweeps, and our staff has done the best they can to weave that into their very long lists of regular code requests and complaints. And so we're proposing a team of 5 that would be available to address these special projects. That's some code enforcement 1-2 officers and their vehicles, an assistant code enforcement officer. That's been a very successful classification to help us bring people into the field, a support specialist to keep them all organized, and a light equipment operator who's likely to actually support on the rapid response side and potentially some of these projects. In addition, there's an opportunity as we continue to see the grant monies that are available to us, big dollars out there. We wanted to create a planner position that would actually help us with some of our long-range planning related to mobility so that we can better leverage many of the grant opportunities that ultimately the money goes to Public Works for construction, but wanting to create a position that helps us to leverage all of these opportunities and plan forward in coordination with Public Works. Last 2 items here is that we have 8 Clean City teams. We feel like they're having good impact, but as we've asked our teams in the field what would make the biggest difference, it is having Clean City teams dedicated to our rapid response teams and to our impact team so that they don't have to report and wait or delegate that out or frankly spend our impact officers or rapid response officers time on those cleanups, but have Clean City teams come behind them and be able to do that cleanup work and keep our other 8 teams out proactively cleaning up our streets because there's still lots of work to do in that area. And lastly, we've been able to conduct our pop-up events fairly successfully, but wanting to have a small ongoing allocation to help support those pop-up events to continue into the future. So that's a very quick summary of our ongoing expenditures. Again, if you would look at the percentage of new monies going to ongoing compared to years 1 through 3, this is a very much smaller percentage, particularly when you take out some of those one-time operating expenditures to get set up. We're increasing the ongoing at a very small margin comparatively to prior years. Excuse me. This just gives a sense of the breakdown visually. Again, public safety, biggest priority. We're also looking at safety and cleanliness through development services, having the biggest impacts there as well. This is just to give some perspective on positions overall. We've now been through 3 full cycles. This is the last cycle. That fiscal year 22 column for 108 positions does include our mid-year additions, but without those mid-year additions, it was closer to the 70, I think it was 76. And so there's been a slowly dwindling number of new positions added, and this year, very few added, with the bulk being in police. If you look at all personnel, again, this just visually gives a sense of where we've made those biggest impacts. Policing, clearly, economic development, as I mentioned, has significant by comparison to what you might expect because we didn't have those staff. And then ultimately, I think development services and parks and recreation with our expansions to code enforcement and rapid response reflect those positions there. Now moving into our one-time requests. So you'll note here by City Council goal organization, again, public safety, very large number. Quality of life, though, has some significant investments there, and infrastructure, more than we've ever seen before. I'll walk through each of these. On the public safety side, there's opportunities to continue to work with our regional partners on regional solutions. We've been working closely with the Sheriff's Office, District Attorney, Probation, and coming up with some programs that may help close some of our most challenging gaps. And this is a set aside to help us fund the outcomes of those planning efforts. Also, with care courts, as announced by the state, excuse me, that's a later line. On the violence prevention, we have been able to make good progress with our CalVIP program, but feel like there's an opportunity, instead of just triaging and intervening, to spend some, in the big scheme of things, a much smaller amount of funding on prevention programs that, as the adage goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of intervention, and trying to identify programs that will help us stay ahead of future issues so that we're not continuing to spend the same amount on some of our intervention efforts in the long run. We have the new police training facility. It's been a huge asset. It's allowed us to put 2 academies through there each year, but it's tight. It's already very challenging, and so there's a few upgrades to the atrium area and to another building for physical education in the back that would help meet recommendations that Post gave to us to really maximize the use of that facility. Also, the agility work of the recruits is happening in the back lot in a small grass area around there, and we feel like there's an opportunity to leverage a nearby park in Yokitz to create an agility course there in the park that would be an amenity to the community, but also meet our agility course needs for our cadets and be a win-win there. Interestingly, this is a little bit of a reminder that facility was purchased under the TRIP program, and we've never paid TRIP back. And so we actually have a payment to purchase that building, and there's going to be another, this is about half of the cost. We'll have another $1 million allocation to make that a formally city property and not a not something that, again, that was acquired with other funding sources. The property room, as I mentioned earlier, is really at capacity. We've collected so much property, and with new hold requirements from the state, we're out of space. And we've added some monies at mid-year to help expand the facility, but there's they call it articulated shelving that can compress together, and it can either double or triple the amount of space that's available in an area like that. And so this is an investment with a big return as well. Our fire engine reserve, we actually had struggles with pulling some of our rigs off the streets to do the maintenance that is needed for them to do, because we have so few in reserve that we can't have them offline for days at a time. Also, our reserves are adequate but stretched, and so if something were to happen to more than one vehicle at any given time, we'd be hard pressed to keep rolling. And this gives us a little bit more of that room, but more importantly creates many efficiencies in the ability to do preventative maintenance and regular maintenance and some deferred maintenance to keep our rigs running as best they can. Some of these others are the police pre-employment exams. That's just an annual allocation we expect to run to academies. We've had that number in there each year, but we still continue to treat it as a one-time based on how many hires we think we're going to make each year. Our 4th Rapid Response Team that's going to be on the river area, as well as our park rangers, need a place to call home, and so this is a set aside to create a facility so they can roll out quickly from an area near the river. As I mentioned, we're continuing to deploy more and more cameras. We did some more funding at mid-year, but still see an opportunity to do even more, particularly in all of our parks over phases, and this would start that process. And then I mentioned the artificial intelligence. There's an ongoing cost to that, but there's a one-time cost to acquire software to help us with that analytics, and that's represented here. And then lastly, there's a property on Truxton that's close to our other police facilities that we think would be valuable to acquire to help us have greater use of the full space that's in that area. And ultimately, it's not a bad investment for the city, regardless of the use. On the homelessness side, not many investments. We made significant investments at mid-year related to Brundage Lane Navigation Center. There was one small piece that was not in the expansion, a repair to the roof. We continue to have ongoing issues each rain. And lastly, some dollars as the care courts from the proposal of the state could go live, as well as leveraging some of the homeless court work that's happening at other shelters now. This is an opportunity to stand up one more tool to help us in either getting folks their records clean to have access to jobs and housing, or in some instances to try and help divert or hold individuals accountable that have been accessing our services or programs. Related to fiscal solvency, again, we're not seeing large allocations to our reserves because we've met those goals, but there are a few important pieces here. As I mentioned, we did our risk assessment. I'm recommending $300,000 to create a performance program that would allow us to do 5 to 6 projects each year to follow up on improving our performance and assessing those areas of greatest risk out of the risk assessment. Some folks might call this like an internal audit or performance audit program. I call it creating a model of excellence, but you could call it one of those other things if you wanted. As far as grant writing, we've already leveraged the mid-year dollars to write several grants, and we see huge opportunities to get grant funding, and so we think we just put more funding there to make sure we don't miss any opportunity. We made mid-year set-asides related to compensation. We expect that this number probably won't cover it all. The mid-year number probably won't cover it all, but this is another set-aside to help us prepare for any adjustments that may come. On the customer service side, we've leveraged that $100,000 each year for our employee development fund. We're finding great success there, and the ability, we would like to take this to more and more employees, and so it's a small increment there to do more of that same work in training our employees. Community engagement, we've done some work out of the city manager's office to build our skill sets around that, but feel like, again, increasingly because of the work that we're doing and the many grants that we're applying for, there's opportunities to get better at how we engage with the community, and these are some nominal dollars to help with some training and some toolkits to help us create more expertise around community engagement. And lastly, like on the PD side, we expect that there's going to be some exams and supplies for hiring of the staff that are recommended, and that's a small amount for human resources to carry out the hiring of those employees recommended. Related to quality of life, this is largely related to parks, so we actually have $7 million recommended for parks. The MLK Park Reimagining is moving forward through the master plan process, but we anticipate another $1.6 million in set aside to help do design and preliminary work to help be ready for any construction that follows the master planning process. Mesa Marin has been a long road getting there, but this is the last installment, Vice Mayor, and we will go out to bid this summer if we're able to move forward with this allocation. We have park access improvements. It's been very successful, to small amounts of dollars to help improve sidewalks, curb, and parking lots over this last year. This is adding additional dollars to do more lots and more areas to improve park access. Several of these others, I'm actually going to not speak to each one of these items, but you'll see many park items, and these are based on, again, our deferred maintenance schedule or regular replacement schedule. We've actually caught up on the deferred maintenance in nearly every area. But we're now at the point where we're doing some regular maintenance. It's nice to be on schedule, and some upgrades in some areas, even though we've been able to replace, say, a playground like for like, but the opportunity to actually put in something better or put in more security measures at parks, we have opportunities to do that. To the public commenters, point made tonight about CAT programs, we've had a $50,000 or maybe $60,000 pilot this year for spay-neuter, and it's gone very successfully, and so we're recommending an increase there to help us continue to get at our spay-neuter programs and trap-neuter release programs to stay ahead of many of our challenges at the shelter, although we think that those dollars, deserve some discussion or process for how those are awarded, but we're making more monies available for individuals that can do that to stay ahead of those both domestic and feral cat challenges. This next one is something very new and interested in council feedback on this, but we've been able to do some gateway or beautification efforts, but this would be the initiation of being able to do some art installations at key locations in the city as we either do road projects, other infrastructure projects, facility projects, having some dollars to be able to create sense of place and beautification. And I think it's fair for folks to say, in light of many of our challenges around public safety, homelessness, is this the best allocation of those dollars? And my argument is, until we start creating more sense of place, or in the example of those violence prevention dollars, until we start spending some prevention dollars, we're just going to keep chasing our tails on some of those challenges that are facing us. And this helps us to create quality of life, economic development, and creating the beautiful city that we know we want, that will help to reduce some of our other challenges. Again, in the scope of our large budget, this is a small amount to start at that work. I think we would all wish we could spend more, but it's a beginning to that work. Lastly, we've been doing some work related to graffiti, and we bought a trailer to help our graffiti team, and the thought was that we could pull that trailer with a mix of different vehicles, and it's proved to be challenging and not as effective as we had hoped, and this would be a dedicated vehicle for that graffiti team to be able to be more timely in their responses. Related to infrastructure, also a new concept is creating some grant match funds. There are many projects that we want to do in any given year. We don't always know what grants might be able to support those, and what this would do is set aside funding to help us either match those grants, complete the funding gaps that are there, both in grants in infrastructure or facilities or in general, as well as specifically for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. This has been a large demand from the community, and there are significant grant opportunities in this area, and that's why there's a specific allocation there. We actually have a project that we did an initial phase of, but we need to go back through and complete a beautification phase of a trail, and that's one that's specifically noted there. We want to continue to have some dollars allocated for our gateway and beautification programs. Like we've done in previous years, $1 million each year. We want to keep putting $1 million for street lighting to continue to deploy those until we've implemented the full street lighting study. We actually had a concept to do hardscaping along West Side Parkway and had some dollars for that, but we're about $250,000 short for an initial demonstration project there, and want to put some dollars there to complete that project. We've talked about creating a traffic calming toolkit, but if you have a toolkit and no monies to do any projects, the idea here was to have some dollars, although this won't do everything we would like. It would allow us to do some demonstration projects to show what traffic calming can look like. We're still playing catch up on ADA and some of the known issues that we have, and so we're wanting to put dollars there to get there. There's been a lot of conversations about medians and streetscapes. There's $650,000 in our capital outlay fund programmed for next year, but there's an option here out of PSVS to supplement that to do a few more projects and make that stretch farther. Related to annexation, we know we're going to be pursuing annexations more aggressively. This would help both pay for some of the front end work, but more importantly, this would actually create some funding so that when we do annex an area and we need to go in and address some infrastructure, address some street paving and the like, we would have some funds there. I wish I could put more in there. The funding is tight, but this is at least a set aside to help us get at projects in areas that we annex. And if we don't I would recommend if we don't fund that, or expend all that in this coming year, actually roll that into next year and have an allocation the year after and build up some funds in that annexation fund so that we're able to do more when we start bigger annexation efforts. There's just an opportunity to spruce up some of our crosswalks and do some demonstration projects there, so some funds there. And then we continue to have many older streets and even unpaved alleys in some of our older neighborhoods or disadvantaged neighborhoods. And we have some funding in capital outlay, but this would supplement that with additional funding to do more of that until we get all of our alleyways and streets paved. There's only one last item on the one time. We actually have done design work for a complete streets for Chester and H Street that is between Brundage Lane and Truxton. And this is based on the downtown street corridor study that was completed. And this allocation would allow for the construction. And we put it in this bucket, but it really speaks to public safety. It speaks to economic development. And it speaks to, urban renewal. And this is, I anticipate us trying to do projects on many of our, key corridors that are similar to this as part of our urban renewal efforts. So just again, in summary, that's about close to $38 million in one-time projects. We're fortunate to be able to contemplate many of those. Or many projects, and this just gives a sense of, again, how that plays out. Still significant investments in public safety, but able to do a little more infrastructure and quality of life. This just represents, in total, the $45 million. And just as a real quick recap, we do have meetings of our oversight committee through April. We'll be able to come back to council in May and June through our regular budget process. But that's a preliminary look, and welcome council feedback related to any of the proposals that are up on the screens tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Before we go to council for comment, I just want to recognize a representative from Senator Melissa Hurtado's office, Janet Tapia. Thank you very much. We appreciate the senator's support of our community and always welcome your engagement. Thank you so much for being here. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. Mr. Clegg, thank you so much for the presentation tonight, and thank you to your team and Mr. McKeegan as well for all your hard work. There's a lot here, and there's a lot for us to be optimistic about for our community. We are, I think, doing what we said we were going to do when we went out to the voters to ask them to tax themselves. This is the Public Safety and Vital Services Initiative. I want to frame this conversation a bit by sharing with my colleagues two stories. Last Monday, I get a call, and I went over to one of my constituents' homes, elderly gentleman in his mid-80s, a pastor in our community, a respected member of our community, who the night before went to bed and was shot in the face by a stray bullet from a shooting just a block away. Thankfully, with millimeters, he missed the bullet from killing him. On Friday, I get a call about a constituent on Flower and Brown Street who was a teenager and who was shot and killed shot multiple times and murdered at 3:30 in the afternoon. We have a violence problem in this community. This is the Public Safety and Vital Services Initiative. We have to think differently about how we're going to respond to this violent crime in our community. And it can't rest on the shoulders of the police department solely. And so I appreciate staff's recognition that stronger intervention efforts must be in place in order for us to break the cycle of violence and that retaliation that is likely to occur when these acts happen, and also the prevention efforts. We have to get in and redevelop and revitalize many of our disadvantaged communities. We have to give these young people more opportunities to succeed. We have to inspire and give more hope. I was with Pastor Manuel Carrizales yesterday morning, and he is in the trenches every single day, meeting with families, talking with members of various different gangs, and he is seeing the shift in dynamics of what's happening in our neighborhoods. We have to think about public safety differently. And so I just want to thank staff for being very serious about this, looking into our intervention efforts, strengthening our prevention efforts as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate everything you put together tonight. It's fine. It's well good, but I was taken aback. Well, let's start a different way. Ever since Measure In passed, I know there's council members, me and some others, that are concerned about how much we're locking into ongoing costs. And when I saw 2/3 of that money's already locked into ongoing costs, it alarms me, because I never thought we'd go over 60%. And so I think all this is fine, but you have to look at it from a distance too. And if we don't, we got class and comp coming up now. That's going to add to the ongoing costs. It has to. And I don't want us just to get the 70%, because I can tell you every member sitting up here has some one-time money things that they would love to complete, like a park called Mesa Marin. No, I'm serious though. Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting in taxis and I look at these things and I look at them not individually. I don't try to nail down everything that's in one category. But when I look at it, if I see there are ongoing costs or eating them alive, well, they have a choice. They either have to take care of that, or they're not going to be a client anymore because they'll be out of business. So I wonder if we can't set some standards. Just how much of this can we really invest in ongoing costs? And how much should we set aside for one-time costs? Because we need both of them. And it really is frightening to see that number up so high. In 3 years, it's gone to 2/3 of the budget. So I would hope that we can have a conversation on this, ongoing conversation on this, because we really need to look at it from a distance.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And if I may respond, I think it's a good point. We've done research and homework to look at peer agencies. We actually haven't found examples of those same type of policies, but that doesn't mean it's not wise for us to do that. We were just hoping to plagiarize a little bit. But we've given some good thought to that. I think also the long-range financial tool gives us really good insight into what are the cost implications over a 20-year period of these ongoing costs. I think will help us create a policy.
Just a second. I'm going to ask for an officer to go out in the lobby right now. Okay, go ahead.
So I think if there's interest, we could preview some conversations about a policy statement with Budget and Finance Committee, and we've actually been contemplating setting actually some policies about when we have unreserved fund balances, what do we do with those? And to your feedback at our last session that was, I believe it was mid-year, but to our ongoing pension costs and the Section 115 trust, to create a policy that dictates that we put money away to that at certain checkpoints if we have certain unreserved fund balances, as one example. So I think we're close to a good place to be able to set policy by the council of what those amounts should be.
Okay. Close meaning what?
I think we could do that this budget cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. I concur with both Ken and Andre's statements, and I'll start with what Ken had to say. First of all, when it comes to budget, you know, it's PSVS right now, but I would like those kind of things bifurcated. I mean, we still have a general budget out there. We focus on PSVS all the time. But if we didn't have PSVS, we'd probably still be hiring some police officers, some personnel, buying some equipment. And I just don't want us kicking everything over to PSVS and negating what we make out of the general fund and what has historically been general fund positions or revenues or expenditures, what have you. And I agree that we need to be frugal and prudent with the gift that the taxpayers have given us. When I look at those figures, I mean, they're just astronomical. But, you know, there could be a day when those figures aren't as high. I remember a lot of my colleagues when if we were up $1 million or something, we'd be ecstatic. And most of the time it was down. And I'm serious. It was really, you know, kind of a bumpy road for a while. Now, kind of to Andre's point, and get back to the presentation on the breakdown, the pie chart of sales tax revenue, taking away consumer goods, Amazon, stuff like that. The number, or the second producer of sales tax, and arguably the number one in Bakersfield tax revenue is auto sales, and it's the Auto Mall. And I got a call just recently, and I know we talked about a Christian, from an owner that owns multiple dealerships in the Auto Mall, and they stated that crime is just out of control in that area. Homelessness, other things, but there's a lot going on, and his direct comments were, you know, we didn't oppose Measure N, but our sales are way up. We know we're producing more money for the city of Bakersfield, and our crime problem's worse than we've ever seen it out here. So if we can do something there. Now to pivot just a little bit, regarding the fire engine reserve, I'm not really clear on that. In talking to some folks, sometimes let's say there's just a broken hydraulic line on an engine, excuse me, that the police department has a mechanic, you know, right down the street here. You see the garage open whenever you leave the parking lot. I don't think the fire department has that anymore. I know years gone by they used to have that. So if you have a hydraulic hose that goes on an engine or a truck, and they have to take it to the yard and it sits there for 2-3 days or longer until a mechanic that's, you know, working on trash trucks or whatever, they finally get to it, when it's a critical piece of equipment, and whatever that figure was, 500,000 I think it was, but and maybe that's needed to have reserve engines, but maybe if we just hired a mechanic, a lot cheaper cost to be able to fix some of these quick turnaround type things that can put that equipment back on the street. Do you have a comment, Christian?
Thanks, Councilmember. I think good thoughts about, you know, prioritizing both our repairs as well as trying to be as efficient as possible. We've actually, in addition to our ability to, you know, have apparatus in our shop, as well as, you know, we actually send some of the work out, although some of that for like fire, for example, is very specialized. But we feel like we actually done a fleet study in this last year, and it's told us a lot about how we can be more efficient in fleet. And so there's some work that we're doing around the edges on that to become more efficient, but we feel like to really have a game changer and catch up on that deferred maintenance, that the reserve really gets us there in ways that, you know, the positions or those other efficiencies won't. But good thinking, and we'll take that back as we review this fleet study if there's ways to through some staffing adjustments to help get at some of those challenges as we prioritize repairs.
Okay. Last thing on that is, our public safety vehicles, 24/7, 7 days a week, take the most pounding out of any of our vehicles. And that's why, again, the police department has a mechanic, or maybe more than one mechanic, working on the vehicles. And I think maybe that should be looked at for the fire department too. Last thing, and I don't know if it's PSVS, but I'm just going to throw it in instead of making under council statements. It's been about a year and a half, maybe longer. We talked about, and it's right on the line between Ward 1 and Ward 7, Golden Valley High School, a safety, blinking lights, crosswalk in that area. I don't think it'd be a large expense, but it is a danger, it is a hazard to those students right there, and if staff can look at somehow getting that on board as soon as possible.
We'll get an update, but my understanding is we've actually already identified the funding, and that's in the works based on those prior referrals, but we'll follow up and make sure.
Thanks, Christian.
If I may just take a quick opportunity too, because I failed to mention on the ongoing side, there is a distinction between personnel costs that are going to be 20-year costs if we don't cut back any positions, and what we are calling ongoing, but it's a lot of contract work or other allocations. For example, the $5 million a year allocation to affordable housing, that's part of that 67% number, or 67 million. Also, the $1.2 million we've been putting aside each year for property acquisition for our urban renewal, that's within that ongoing number as well. So there's actually more than $20 million in our ongoing budget that are those type of items that aren't truly ongoing, but we keep, the plan was to keep putting them in the budget for several years. And I don't think that mitigates any of the conversation, or not mitigates, I don't think that dismisses any of the conversation we've already had that we should create policies to set, standards or limits on what funding amounts they should be. But I did intend to share with the council that many of those programs that we probably thought would get funding every year for maybe the first 5 years, I think as we make progress in those areas, we'll be able to pivot those funds to other things in the long run, and they're not truly locked in ongoing costs, even though we budget them each year. And we could take a close look at that as we go through the budget. Again, this was a preliminary look at how we spend the $45 million that's available to us, but we'll be able to compare with what's on the general fund side and also actually what's in the capital outlay, because transient occupancy tax was pretty good this last year too, and we're going to be able to do a fair number of capital projects on the capital outlay side, maybe more than the average year. And putting all that into context will be really helpful, but wanted to get this in front of council for some feedback before we go to Oversight Committee.
Vice Mayor.
I appreciate what you're saying. And maybe they're temporary ongoing costs, but you and I both know there's going to be other costs that come along. And if you watch the affordable housing tonight, we got our work cut out for us. So I really do believe we need to have some policy on that to where we're not committing ourselves to excess spending in the ongoing costs.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councilmember Parlier, anything else?
Hope you have a good night, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. I think the sense of place in public art is a positive thing. I think it's an economic driver and part of redevelopment and changing neighborhoods, and I appreciate that. The grant match fund for bike ped stuff, like you say, we get a lot of feedback in the community for that. Taxpayers Association being one of the loudest sometimes. And I would also, just reinforce that public safety isn't all about police and fire. It's also about redevelopment and economic development and changing neighborhoods and changing people's lives. I do remember conversations on the ongoing cost before, and the number that was in my head, and it's up for discussion, and I appreciate the Vice Mayor bringing it up, but 25% was the number that I had in my head that was not allocated in ongoing costs. So, different people have different ideas, but that's up for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you, Christian, for the presentation tonight to get ahead, give us an opportunity before the committee gets the opportunity. That's wonderful. But anyway, I think you've had some really good feedback here tonight. I'm listening hard, and I think everybody here has got great feedback. I like what Ken is saying about having a percentage, set so we have standards, because it's so easy to spend money. And it's also easy to use this as kind of a little pot of gold where some of these expenses really could, if we sat down and talked more about it, maybe be in our general fund instead of pulling out of this PBS fund. But I think we need to keep in mind that, number one, and Andre really spoke to this point, the reason the taxpayers voted for this with their hard-working dollars is because of public safety. That is their number one priority. Nothing comes above that. And as I talk to people, I hear that continually. Chief and I were having a conversation in the caucus room tonight about his shot spotter, and I didn't know what that was. And that was just amazing to me. And I asked, well, how many of those do we have? And he says, well, we cover 6 square miles out of 150 square miles. And he told me it's already saving lives. I mean, they can detect where that gun is being shot from immediately. So I would like to see where we are investing more in those things that are saving lives, like this gentleman, thank God, praise God that he wasn't killed. And that we won't be so stretched out there in our police department. So I think we've got to be really careful because inflation is here. We've got supply chain problems. 20% of our PVS funds are coming from the auto mall. I'm hearing it's getting harder and harder, even though their sales are up. It's going to be harder, trying to get vehicles in. And I have already, in our small business, been hearing from people that had appointments with us for new kitchens and bathrooms, and we've had a lot of this happen in the last month. Sorry, Everett and Patty, we have decided that we are holding our money right now because we don't know what's going to be coming. And I saw this happening before the recession. We got those first hints of what's the stock market going to do and so forth, and people could be pulling back. So it's really important that we learn from lessons of the past and make sure that we're very conservative in our spending and taking care of that number one priority. I've lived it. A lot of us here have, back in 2007, 8, and 9, and I don't want to see that happen to the city. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. In agreement with my colleague there, public safety is at the top of mind for me, certainly the constituents that I represent. And as I think about it, one, I'm really proud of what, Alia, Dr. Kaiser, and the team have done with CalVIP. I think it's a great model that's implemented, but specifically helps, those who have been afflicted by gun violence, and working with community partners to get that work done, work with local hospitals and schools, so that we are directly assisting those families. And I don't know how this works, Chief, and we don't have to talk about it tonight, but I'm wondering if there's a way that we can better assist and support some of our both small businesses, but also our larger businesses, whether that be the Auto Mall or the Plaza, or what's remaining of the East Hills at this point. Is there a way that we can be more communicative and more cooperative and support them and making sure that, when there are situations, because they happen regularly, that we have a team kind of like CalVIP that is, quick to respond. Maybe it's not, a sworn officer, but we have that direct line of communication from BPD with that, whether it's the general manager of the site or the personnel that's actually working there at the time. I think that's something that we ought to look into, and I think even starting that communication and that building that relationship can oftentimes go a long way. I've talked to a number of developers who I've tried to encourage to come into Ward 1, who have frankly said, there's no way, buddy, simply because of the public safety challenges. And I think if we were able to strengthen that relationship, build maybe a program out of that, that can certainly go a long way, not only in terms of public safety, but also in terms of economic development. There's a lot of good things in this budget proposal. Really excited about what's going on at MLK Park with their reimagining dollars. Very sad that it's not going to be in Ward 1 in the next couple of months, but very excited to continue to support the great efforts there. I really appreciate Rick and his team. If he's still there in the back, kudos to him and his team for continuing to push on that. We're really excited to make some big investments in game-changing efforts there. Quick question on the park access improvements. Is that allocation also going to include some of the gates that we need for the parking lots on some of the parks?
Actually, one item I should have mentioned in that list of parks that's distinct from the others is there was a $500,000 allocation for park maintenance and improvements and capital projects that are kind of miscellaneous, actually. So what's been happening, and this, I'll keep it brief, but an important reflection that I had in talking with Parks about this proposal is that we haven't had money in our regular capital budget to fix small things in parks. If a trash receptacle's been burned out, or if a pavilion needs a fresh coat of paint, or a drinking fountain needs to be fixed, unless it's a dedicated CIP project, they've been basically finding ways to scrimp out of operating funds to make those repairs happen. And kudos to that team for doing that for so long. But that's not necessarily the best way to operate. And so one of the line items in this proposed budget is to actually have $500,000. It's a little higher than you would need on an ongoing basis, but it's because we need to catch up so that they can quickly deploy these types of repairs that might not be, if it's a $100 repair, $500 repair, $2,000 repair, we can make it work. But if you're talking about several $10,000, $40,000 repairs, that's tough on the existing resources. And so that fund is designed to first build gates in parks that have internal parking lots that make sense to put them at, as well as catch up on some of the deferred maintenance that's in our parks, and then have those funds to be able to quickly go in and make some of those small fixes that actually have a pretty big return on investment. Fresh coat of paint goes a long way. And so that is in the budget there, but not in the park access.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I think there's a number of good things in there. Rick is actually the one who says this all the time. He is the director of both Parks and Recreation, and would love to, and maybe it's not ready and primed for this particular budget cycle, but really dig into opportunities for those families to recreate and create some programming out of that. I think there's a number of parks in Ward 1 that could greatly benefit. Lowell Park, in my mind specifically, is that case in point, where the infrastructure is there. It's a beautiful park, but we're lacking programming and activity that could really keep out some of those negative forces in the community.
If I may, Councilmember Arias, that is something we've contemplated. What is the city's potential role there? When you talk about the ongoing funds, that's a big challenge for us, and in contemplating how to provide meaningful programming that is sustainable on an ongoing basis in the long term. But where I think incrementally where it makes a lot of sense when you look at that allocation that we set aside for violence prevention programs. Those are designed to be some more of those, community prevention programs. And so if our research comes back that, we need to get at job readiness or literacy or just programming in some of our, revitalization neighborhoods, that's actually one of the intents of that little bucket, is to look at that and say, what can we do? But I think it probably needs to be in a very targeted and focused effort because we really haven't identified the sustainable funding source to go bigger than that at this point.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it gets back to Ken's comments about, I think the need to kind of cap our ongoing expenses, and if there are opportunities to, create incentives or potentially even contract out with somebody who's professionally trained to run an operation of that sort, I think that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Any other comments from colleagues? Vice Mayor.
Motion to receive and file.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Freeman absent.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council and Mayor statements.
Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one referral tonight. One of the challenges that our community has been facing with when it comes to public safety is this issue of catalytic converter thefts. And in conversation with both the chief and also Councilmember Parlier, we would like to take a hard look at potentially implementing a new ordinance that Ginny has already had a chance to take a look at. But tonight we want to make a referral to the Safe Neighborhoods Committee to bring back an ordinance that would actually enable law enforcement to hold accountable some of those thieves that where there's a gap, which is basically after the act takes place and where a thief or a criminal might actually have, several detached catalytic converters, give them the tools that they need to hold those individuals accountable. And with that, I just want to say congratulations on finishing up redistricting. I'm so glad that has finally finished and looking forward to the next coming meetings. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. Since redistricting, I wanted to make a couple referrals for what is now Ward 4, but won't be Ward 4 in a month or so. Bike lanes on Stockdale Ranch Drive and River Run Boulevard. Those are collector streets, and we've talked about doing bike lanes on collector streets. And I think the Air District's Remove 2 program is a good grant program for those, if you look at that. And then the other thing was I'd like for staff and conversation with council to look seriously at community choice aggregation. Recent grant on the microgrid, and Bakersfield being the energy capital of California, it makes sense to me that it could be a job creator and also save our constituents some money if we looked at that seriously. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. A few months ago, I guess it was in January, the council convened a meeting and we were working on setting a vision for this city council. Where we're going, what it's going to look like, so on and so forth. I, at this point, don't even think the public knows that that happened. And I would like to have a presentation on that sometime in May. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other colleagues? Today we celebrated the 20th anniversary of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. volunteers. I think it's like 132,617 volunteers who have helped over the years just cleaning up stuff. It's amazing to see on a Saturday morning that people will be out there 7 o'clock cleaning up. And so I just want to congratulate all of you who have, and thank all of you who have participated. Thank you, Councilmember Aria Smith and Parlier and staff who were at the celebration today. And just want to encourage all of you to participate in the Great American Cleanup, April 30th. That's a Saturday from 8 to 10, followed by an event at Yokes Park. But it would be great if we can all get out there and just keep supporting our volunteers. Seeing no other requests to speak, we're adjourned at 8:35. Thank you. And officers in the lobby, thank you for responding to that issue. Appreciate it.